Steering committee is in session. So I want to thank Judy for also joining us, representing her team. Thank you, Judy. So
Thank you.
Why don't we start off, we'll do an attendance. So, and I think because no members are on Zoom, we don't need to do roll call by name. So we can just do a normal roll call. But just to be clear, I'll read out who's here. So Carrie, Janet, John, Jen, Mike, Danelle, Katie, and myself. So we have 7 attendees for a quorum of tonight. So before we start, just want to do a little background with make sure that that Judy has caught up and get a sense of where, what we'll be doing tonight. So we in the last meeting, we covered 5 of the elements, 5 of the goals. So there are 3 more to go, and the 10th one, which is the land use, has been divided among all of the other 9 goals based on the appropriateness of the recommendation. So we did do votes on a few things, but then after that we went to primarily a discussion and got a lot of good feedback. And Judy, I don't know, have you had a chance to look at the feedback from us?
Yeah, and I referred comments to the team members for them to review and address. And so they have them.
So for tonight, should we cover the other 3? And I think so the other there's really 4 more: economic development, climate change, and then the community health. It looks like we don't have yet, so it's ready to be 2.
Right.
So
right.
So should we start covering economic development and climate change for tonight?
So are the housing ones done then? I'm sorry,
No,
I may have missed
we haven't
a
done
call
housing
or
either. I'm
something.
sorry, we haven't done housing.
Okay, that's okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
okay.
no, that's right. Yeah. So
that's right.
So we could do those 3.
Yep.
But we should wait for your feedback, your updated, action items on the others before we haven't done a formal vote on most of them.
Well, I think those that don't require much substantive comment from us, you should go ahead and vote on.
Okay, so I think we could do that. I actually watched the whole meeting again. I took copious notes to see exactly where, and I think there were only a few things that we actually had some matter of debate on, discussion. So, but why don't we take the 3 new ones first, just so we cover all of them at least at some level, if that makes sense. Are you good with that, Judy?
That's fine.
Yep.
Can I ask a question of Judy? Judy, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
I think it's great you're here because I think there was some confusion, and I think you're the best person to answer the question, just to clarify, okay? Okay.
Sure.
So there was some questions on the material, and there were things that were thought to be important that weren't included, and then there were new things included that we hadn't thought we talked about. So can you just clarify that for us, how that worked
Sure.
and why, just so we know exactly?
Sure. So the 3 kind of what do you think items that we gave the committee for the various elements a few weeks back were really to give us a sense of where the committee's thinking was. We then tried to build on that, a broader set of recommendations for each element. So if you wondered why all of a sudden you were getting different content, that was the intent. That we wanted to get a sense of what the committee's thinking was about the few things we had already given you. So this is the more complete set of recommendations for each element. That's what you have now. And if there was something that we missed, that we took out, that you wanted to include, then we'll certainly restore it. But I don't think the intent was to remove content as much as to perhaps build on it.
Okay,
And I did a mapping from, you know, from the first sessions to our new set. And there was a few things that might have, you know, that changed, but that might look very different, but.
Changed or omitted?
yeah.
Changed the way it was worded.
Okay,
maybe.
but not omitted.
There were a few
There might-
things
there might have
missing.
been one, you know,
Yeah.
there was like the Blackburn Hall one that I think we want to make sure was still there, that came up. So some of them, we need, also, we haven't gone through all of them to make sure they're all there from the, you know, economic development.
And so these
So-
aren't the, these
I'm
aren't the
sorry, go ahead.
finals. These aren't the finals. These are just, you're taking our, what's the word I want to use? Input on them, and you're going to mesh things again. Am I correct?
Yeah, whatever comments we get from you, we're going to figure out how to address them.
Okay.
But this
If
list
there's
is-
something that we don't have content to support back in the chapter, then I think we need to have a conversation, but I haven't seen that yet.
Okay.
But Judy, the list, what we have now is the final list of recommendations.
There
that-
are recommendations. We're not planning to add more to the ones that you've
Yes,
got.
but that is the
No,
final.
I
Unless
don't
it's
mean-
something that you,
I don't mean
Unless
the
it's something-
points.
sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't mean the points. I mean the content.
The content.
Yeah.
So,
I don't mean the
I,
8 points or 9 points, whatever it is,
The content.
The
within
goals.
points.
yeah.
those charts are, here's a goal, and here are kind of policies that the town would want to embrace in order to achieve that goal. The action items that relate to the policies are kind of, this is how you implement this policy. So we're not planning to add more recommendations to the sections we've given you. However, if the committee wants to add something and we have the content to support it, naturally, we're going to do that.
What do you
Okay.
mean? The
So there may be
content
more
is supported?
recommendations added
does
to
that
the
mean?
final version, but
Yeah, and just be very clear.
the
when
committee
you-
wants to,
when you say
if the committee
recommendations,
wants to nominate,
You're talking about the recommended action items.
okay.
I
I
just wanna
wonder
make
if it
sure-
would make sense for me to screen share, because I think that I could probably eliminate any confusion very easily.
But can you also elaborate on what you mean by the content to support it?
Yeah, if there's a recommendation that the committee has suggested that we don't have any background for in the inventory and that creates sort of a problem for us as planners, in that we don't know where the recommendation is coming from. But I'm not saying we're not going to put it in the plan. I'm just telling you, we can't go back and sort of now backfill on those sections. So that's all I'm trying to say. I'm not saying we're going to take something out that the committee feels strongly about.
But Judy, those recommendations that you added did not come from the town or the people within the town though, correct?
Well, they're based on our analysis of the inventory and existing conditions, and also input that we heard from people. But I mean, we're looking at it as planners. We're saying, okay, here's a condition in this community, and what are the options available to address this condition? That's what master plan recommendations do. It's sort of identifying an issue, and then what can you do about it? And in the case of this table, it's sort of like, well, how some of these things are harder to do than others. So we've tried to flag for you the things that we think might be more or less, complicated. But, we wouldn't be doing our job if we didn't identify recommendations that we think the town should consider.
So can I give you an example, and maybe you can say,
Sure.
and this is just an example that I had. So, for example, under the municipal facilities, one of the discussions
Yep.
we had, and this is only reason I'm bringing it up is because it was fresh on my mind, was public safety, the need
Yep.
of public safety, the possibility of the need of public safety buildings as a result of the housing growth and possibly 40B being put in South Walpole, the South Walpole project, and the fact that I used fire as our easiest example because it was easier to explain. So for example, we have a very small station in South Walpole, we have a very small
Yep.
station in East Walpole. East Walpole is a manned station, South Walpole is not manned. I believe they only open it for the stadium events. And now we have finally come into modern times and have co-ed department. And obviously, our main facility is modern, but our outbuildings are not. And, you know, if the growth occurs, will we need those addressed? So that's something that sort of goes along with the plan, because we're talking about the growth and we're talking about all of that, but we didn't address that. So is that something that, and I also mentioned police, and I don't have the knowledge to speak about what they would need, but basically it was a situation of an action item of to be cognizant of it and look to those needs as they may be a future need. Is that something that would be added, or is that not something you would find you could, like, have the backup for?
If the committee feels that that should be in here, we will add it. We did not hear that from the staff or the town administrator, but that doesn't mean we're not going to add it. If the committee thinks it's important to add that, we will.
Yeah, could I make a comment? Yes, we had a discussion when Judy wasn't here. We were talking about the infrastructure and about sewer and water, for example. And I expressed to Patrick quite a few concerns about that section, about in general, just an inventorying of town resources, number of trucks and things, which I don't know, what function that serves, but there was an emphasis on sewer expansion. And there was also very little mention about water. And water is the most important issue of this town. In fact, you should do two master plans, one without water and one with water, because the one without water be a one-page, find a new home. So I don't know who you interviewed with sewer and water. But I don't know where the information came from, but I need to get that rectified, that the emphasis and the language and the itemization in that area, because there's a whole bunch of nuances with that about where there's a need. The need for sewer is very segmented and targeted. It's not just generic. It's only
Right,
for
of course not.
industrial and high-density locations. And
Right.
there's an intentional thing in this town, because a lot of it's bedroom community where sewer is totally not needed and not wanted. But that has no degree of emphasis compared to the water and the water resources and our efforts to ensure future water resources, both through the MWRA and other local efforts. So I want to make sure that language all gets straightened out, because it's not acceptable.
So I hear you. I think we have a somewhat different sense. Not that the water isn't important, of course it is. But we talked about this as a team after we heard that concern. And there's quite a bit of documentation from the interviews we did, actually even from your own notes from your kitchen conversation, and also in the sewer master plan that the town has, that there may be a need to extend sewer. Now, we're not saying where it should go, but I think it would be irresponsible to not acknowledge that that may be a necessity. But I think the real issue is, probably for this plan, would be to emphasize the importance of implementing the sewer master plan you already have.
Well, yeah,
and
well,
the other thing
that
I think
language
is
didn't
very
reflect
important-
that in your report. It made it sound almost like we didn't have a sewer master plan and we needed to coordinate
was
with all these
referenced in- it was
agencies.
referenced.
And we actually
It's
have a
referenced
very
in there.
up-to-date sewer master plan that really includes the whole town.
Yeah, so
So-
you have a sewer master plan. We did say that. What you don't have is a comprehensive wastewater management plan, which really is, in our opinion as planners, what the town needs. But we're not going to force it on you. I mean, we've talked to John about it. We've talked to Jim. We've made this recommendation. We haven't gotten any pushback from the staff. So I would just say, we've kind of modified the recommendation, the wording of the recommendation, John, because you pushed back. But I just want to say, your opinion isn't necessarily shared by everybody we spoke with when we did interviews.
Well, yeah, I'll have to educate you with some reports and some news stories recently from the MW area in the state of Massachusetts, because you're obviously not aware of what's going on with the water, if you don't think it's important.
I didn't say that it wasn't important.
Well, the town has a sole source aquifer. We have limited capacity, and we have wells that are going at the end of their life cycle. And your staff isn't aware of all those issues. So we have to find new water resources. It's an absolute necessity. It's not an arbitrary alternative or a minimized statement. It's the most important thing in the future of this town. So it's got to be emphasized in that section of the report, period. And you're talking to the chairman of the Water Commission.
Yeah, I know. And you're one voice, and we hear you.
No, I'm not one voice. You dismissed the info. I'll send you some reports.
Not
Everybody knows
dismissing
it.
anything, John. Not dismissing a thing.
Yeah, so I just want to bring back the meeting to structure, just to make sure we get through everything. So,
Can I just ask one more question that we had said we were gonna ask our last meeting?
Yeah.
So,
I was just going to the other questions.
okay, sorry, Phil.
Go ahead.
So there was discussion amongst the group about the wording of some of the action items. So some of the action items are very strong and they say, do this. And some of
Yep.
the action items are more vague and they say, look into that. It almost seemed like maybe someone wrote one section and someone else wrote another section, like
No,
the wording
no.
wise.
I just want to enter here, because what we talked about last.
That's not what
meeting was
happened.
That was, it seemed to be by purpose, because some things you want to say consider, some things you want to really do.
But
So
I
that seemed
believe
very
we discussed that
intentional.
some of them we didn't understand why. And that was
Okay.
why, and we said we would ask Judy. So that was why I'm addressing the question to her, is that,
But maybe we should go through them all individually, then, if we have individual.
but it's what we already, it's all the material we already went through, and we said we were going to ask her. And to readdress all, I mean, we spent over 3 hours last time, and the night before that, we spent probably the same.
If you
So
want,
to
what I would
start
suggest is
fresh.
I actually took notes on
Katie,
all
I
the things we
respect
had
your question,
questions on.
and I'm going to try to address it.
Well,
The policy statements are more global. The action items, which are the numbered items or the items that are in bullets, those are for the most part very specific actions. And in any master plan, you would expect to find both. You would find kind of what's the sort of umbrella concern or issue or what we're trying to get to. It's what are the policies that local decision makers would embrace or adopt in order to address a goal. And then there are actions that get you there. So the actions are the most specific. And that is what you would expect to find in any master plan. It's certainly how your last one was done.
Okay,
But some do say consider and some say enact, adopt.
Yeah.
And we are
And
assuming
if there's
that's
not
by-
enough information, we might say consider, but, for the most part, there was plenty of information to back up what was said. So that's the answer. If there is a specific question about a specific item, either I can try to answer it tonight or I'll get somebody on the team to respond. But that's the
Katie, you were
structure
concerned
of the
about
recommendation
consistency.
section.
No, I think what Katie's saying, a couple people were saying that
it
the
wasn't just
statements
me,
were a
we had a
little
big
prescriptive. They
conversation.
were like,
Yeah, they are.
as opposed to being recommendations.
I'd
The
have to-
language was
Well-
being prescriptive, almost dictatorially.
I'd
And
have to
people
go
don't like
back
that.
and look, like tonight, we said we were gonna handle these 4 items, one of them we didn't have. So to go back, I didn't rehash everything, but we had,
Right.
it wasn't me, it was the group, we had a discussion about it.
Yeah.
There were several people who, it wasn't that we were opposed to it. It was more that because you weren't here, we were looking for clarity.
Yep.
Both of my questions sort of root that way, and it's a
Yep.
situation of, I would say, if, I could look back and see if there was anything specific, and I'm sure the other people in the group who had brought it up could do the same. But I think your explanation makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So,
Phil, I just had one question, just
Yeah.
just to go back. We had looked at the recreation and open space draft last time, and I just had a follow-up, and I just wanted to bring it up and give you some feedback. So I didn't
Sure.
see in the municipal facilities or in the open space and recreation recommendations that there was any real tie back to the recreation programming and facilities study that was just completed. So my understanding is that there's a number of projects that are already targeted for some capital budget improvements, but the things that
Yes.
are recommended in that plan, many of them will require capital budget to get done. So
Right.
wouldn't those be items based on this study that we'd want to get into the master plan as direct?
So
Goals?
those can be handled one of a couple of ways. If you want to have those specific projects in there because they're near and dear to the town and the recreation committee, we can put the specific recommendations in. The other thing we can say is that the town needs to implement that plan. In which case, it's sort of anything that's in there gets in an umbrella way picked up in the
Right,
master
I guess my
plan.
point is that this is something that's been in the works, so if you've gotten feedback from all the different departments, this should have been, considered in either the
Okay.
facilities plan or in the recreation plan, and it wasn't, it was missed, and there's a lot of content in here. I mean, I can go through and make points that the recreation department would say, this is stuff that we want to have in the plan because it's stuff that we need to get done, but I would have thought
Okay.
that, based on your research for all the others, that this would have been done, so
The draft was sent. When did the final one come out?
I don't know, but was the draft provided to
I
Judy?
I had the draft of that plan. I think I forwarded that to Judy and her team in the
Yeah.
summer at some point.
So it
I didn't know
wasn't-
the final draft even came out, so.
I don't think it's the final. I might just have the draft that was there, but even items from the draft weren't included in the plan.
Okay.
So I'd like
So-
to see that.
And that's fine. And this is very helpful. And I apologize if we missed something that to you is terribly important and should be there. All the comments from the last couple of meetings have gone out to the members of the team. And we have a meeting this Friday to kind of go over all those. So I will certainly make sure to bring that up. I appreciate the comment.
And just, I made copious comments that I sent on each of the pages with all that what we heard. I actually listened to the meeting a second time.
Yeah, sure. but I had an item to go follow with Brendan, and I
Patrick
did.
also said something. So if you want,
Okay.
what I was gonna offer, if you wanna go through, we could just look at the items that had questions or comments, not all of them over again. Or we could just go on to the new.
Well, I think if you've already given us comments on the previous ones, why don't we try to get through the new ones tonight?
Okay.
Let's say hypothetically, you were going to write something and you had comments that you're gonna, but you haven't done it yet, just hypothetically. Would it be okay to still submit those comments to Pat before your meeting on Friday?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I have the
I
input.
am also
have
a
the- I have
volunteer.
minutes,
Yeah,
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 exactly.
yeah.
I mean, somebody has the input, they just haven't. put it in
Hypothetically, I
writing
might have a couple of those as well.
yet. Okay, thank you.
But Judy,
You know
just to
what?
be very clear,
It's fine. It's fine.
the recommendations are really those action items at the
Yes.
Those are really the
Yes.
recommendations. And one question I had is, in the initial draft that you had some fairly lengthy write-ups that described each of the action items that actually I thought
No,
were
they were
very
the
valuable.
policies. Those were the policy descriptions.
Yeah, and I'm wondering whether you're gonna do that with,
Yes.
the revised didn't have those descriptions.
Yes. No, because I wanted to get the action items to you.
Yeah, and I thought that was very valuable because it really gave more
Yep.
context about why things were recommended and how it linked to other action items or other recommendations, so.
Agreed. I think that in some cases, there aren't any new policy frameworks, though. I think the original three, or which may have been revised, I think you have those, but I will verify. But we're not, I mean, if there's a new policy, then we owe you a narrative about it. If it's the same policy that was in the previous material we gave you, we don't need to rewrite it, unless you had comments on it, which I have.
But in some places, there seemed to be an overlap on policy and action item.
Oh, there always is.
So, for example,
There always
reinstate
is.
the position of town planner has a long
Yeah.
description under the,
Yeah.
the land use. But
Yeah.
in the, the current set of recommendations, it's just one action item.
I know, and I should have taken that out. That was my own stupidity, so.
But I thought that description was very valuable to have that.
I understand that, but it doesn't belong in that chart.
Oh, okay, but will it be somewhere else then, or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, does anyone have any other questions for Judy, though, before we start? Just want to make sure we got all of our questions answered.
Can I ask one more? The action items, they're not listed in any specific order, or are they? I mean, should the
No,
ones that we
no.
really should be doing be number 1, and the ones that are maybes be number 9?
I'll tell you why I don't do that. Because things change. And what we've learned in this world is that it's better to give you a sense of the relative ease with which something can be done. So that if you're looking for low-hanging fruit, so-called, you can kind of move forward with those quickly. Some things are complicated to do, even if they might be, they may be very important, but they're complicated. And we have found that it just is more helpful to communities to kind of cue people, this is going to be harder and this is not. So we intentionally did not put things in a priority order.
But we did pass on to Judy the comments where people thought the logical order of some of the action items should change. Like in particular, one was the plan for pedestrian, road safety. There was a plan first and there were some action items, so that, we did pass that on to Judy.
Pedestrian infrastructure.
Yeah. So. Any other questions? Are we?
No, I just want to say, I'm going to have to get a rewrite of section 8.3, that's all.
So why don't we start on goal 1, which is economic development. So the first policy is 1A, provide funding and technical assistance to promote new economic development and support existing businesses. And the first one was to implement the recommendations of the Rapid Recovery Plan. And I just want to mention that this was 1.1 in the early draft of recommendations. Judy, do you want to say anything about each of these, or should we?
No,
I'll just wait till people have questions.
I think, what might be very helpful to you, I don't know how you guys want to do this, but most committees we've worked with have kind of taken a section of an implementation chart like this and said, let's sort of treat this as a, is there any need to talk about 1, 2, or 3? And if people say, no, we're okay with them, then you move on. And so basically just focus the discussion on the ones where people have something to say. Now, if people have something to say about all of them, that's fine. But sometimes it's really just sort of a consent agenda type of process, and it can help to save some time. It's up to you guys, but
We tried to use that, the consent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I would encourage you to do that.
I wasn't
if you
gonna
can.
do a vote on each one unless somebody had a discussion or wanted to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Just the
So-
rapid recovery plan, have we been given a copy of that?
The town has it. I don't know if we have it. I'm not sure why you
Mike, do you know
wouldn't,
what
but
the
the town
rapid
has
recovery
it.
program is? No, I don't either. I'm just being honest, right?
It's
Who
online.
did it? Whose plan is it?
There's a grant through DHCD that 140 towns took on at the start of 2021, and so it was a combined effort between the town and then I believe Destination Downtown was the nonprofit that also had applied for the grant at the same time. So a lot of the action items that are in there are both new as it relates to impacts related to COVID, as well as a lot of our pre-existing long-term actions and changes that have been identified both in the Downtown Action Plan that was from 2015, as well as the Downtown Parking and Economic Development Plan from 2019. So it's primarily focused on downtown recovery.
So this was
through
put
that.
together last year?
It
And
came
who-
out,
Who
This
put
came
it
up-
together? Like
came out in
gone through-
October.
the
So it was
school
done through a
department or the?
It was done through a grant through DHCD, and the company Stantec was our,
Because it was a consultant, it wasn't by the town staff.
it was done in conjunction with discussions of town staff as well as a few public outreach events, reaching out and getting local data
Should be available at the library, right? Somebody should make
on
it
the town's
available.
website, which is very easy to access.
and
Yeah.
this
I don't
was
think most
prompted-
people know what it is, I'm just saying, you know, whatever.
Yeah, and this was
We're
prompted
gonna
by.
adhere to the RRP, but really, we don't know, but
Yeah, and this is where the descriptions that were on the preliminary recommendation was good, because that actually has a good description of what it is. If you look at the Goal 1 Economic Development, the first one.
And Phil, the ones that are on Dropbox, these are the ones that we voted on and have been amended based on our comments?
We haven't covered these, for
No,
one, for
On
economic.
the draft recommendations we did cover, we
We covered, yes, and Judy got our comments, and then that's when they went and changed the, if you will, the final recommendations. Again,
But these draft recommendations have not been updated on Dropbox based on our feedback?
no, they haven't been, as far as I know. Yeah, they've.
We're having a
they
team
really-
meeting about it Friday.
The comments from that were provided to Judy and her team,
Yeah.
but there's no revised draft of that.
So
Okay, but
these went away, basically, is my understanding. And then they were replaced by the new sections that you sent out for the ones we're working on now, the 10, right?
So the actions that we're looking at here, are they based on the draft recommendations in the initial draft, or the revised recommendations based on our votes?
These are based on, the 3 policies in this section are policies you already saw. What we did is we took those policy statements and we put detail into them. So these are things that you need to do. They're action items.
Yep, I understand. So I guess, sorry, I just want to repeat my question. I don't have the
Sorry.
notes in front of me, but just as an example, in our larger meeting, if we looked at the economic development goal 1, and we looked at 1.1, and we voted on that and said, we'd like to change the language there, or we'd like to remove it, does that language change, is it represented in the actions in front of us? Or have they not yet been addressed?
I don't think this has been changed.
It was an example. So the others have been changed where we said, take out
Right.
8.3 and take out, so have those been?
We have not given that, no, because as I said, we're having a team meeting for the master plan consultants on Friday.
It's very hard to keep track of all the changes. So we made changes to these, but they're not reflected in this, and we have to vote on this. So
I'm not aware of changes to economic development.
I think you just.
I'm
forget
just
about,
pointing
like-
out, like, it's
Yeah.
very confusing
So
for
for
us.
instance,
the
like,
issue-
in housing, we said inclusionary zoning bylaw, we like took that out, and then, and we said we'd like it to say, and I forget what the exact word was, we came up with a nice sentence, but then
Subsidized housing.
now it says inclusionary zoning bylaw, so I think that's an example.
That's a better example.
We're not
So,
using
and
economic.
when we get to that, I can tell you why we have not taken that out yet.
We're trying
But it
to
sounds like
find the
you
source
haven't,
on
you
this.
haven't
though.
incorporated the feedback yet because you're meeting on it on Friday.
Well,
The ones
I
that
don't
we,
Donnell, you were in the Economic Development Commission still, aren't you?
Yes.
Mike and I were on. Were you, did you recommend this rapid recovery program to be
It
the number
wasn't
one?
done through economic development, but I remember it going around town. I'm trying to think, wasn't there a committee set up for it?
We had no, there wasn't a committee set up for it, but we did meet with the Economic Development Commission.
But
to
we
present
voted on that 1.1.
Right, to present it, yeah,
Yeah.
but not to be involved in the making of it.
In the making of it.
well,
it was-
see,
But I
this
think,
is,
isn't
I
the
think there's
rapid recovery
confusion.
plan akin to the rec plan
Yeah.
that Mike is referencing?
Yeah.
Like,
Correct.
I feel like these are all pieces of information that are being gathered and evaluated, and if, I don't think, we don't have to debate necessarily if it's like a relevant or valid piece of information. It is a piece of the puzzle, and, if somebody's looking for more information about a specific piece of the puzzle, maybe those conversations can happen offline, because I think we're getting a little bit bogged down right now.
I think what's important is that we now have the revised copy of the recommendations, and that's,
So can I,
just
maybe,
said it's not
I'm gonna try to help.
well,
Yeah.
It
I'm gonna try to
shouldn't
help
be a
explain
puzzle,
this.
and we
have
should
to-
know
It
the
isn't a-
sources, that's all. We
I-
should
I-
know just an acronym, AARP, and no one knows what it is, but it's our first priority. Good.
I think what happened was that there was a lot of confusion over those initial draft recommendations, Judy, is what happened. So, and we did, by the way, I have all the votes, and we pretty well voted on the economic development. They were all unanimous except for one. One was, it looks like 9.
Yeah, but those
9-0.
changes we say that we tried to make
Yeah.
there have not been incorporated here yet, correct?
What economic development changes, see, this is where I'm confused. I'm not aware that there were any changes requested to the economic development points, the original 3.
I think we need to have we get to ones where there were already changes to.
So you have our votes on this. What were our votes on economic development?
Somewhere I do, I don't
Yeah,
have them
so
open right
votes
now.
On 1.1 was, it was 901, and all the others were 1000. On 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4.
So there's no reason to talk about rapid recovery plan, because we've already voted that. We know that, that's
Yes.
it. Okay.
Yeah, the challenge though is mapping the things we voted on in the first draft ones, because they don't always map one-to-one.
And
That's correct,
okay.
because you discussed them and we made some changes as
Yeah,
a
so
result of the
something-
discussion.
Yeah.
That's okay, that's okay. The example, I think,
Yeah.
that Jen used is more accurate, we'll get there.
But
And I-
one other point, though, I mean, like, point 2 here talks about the Metropolitan Planning Council and zoning bylaws. And the summation of point 2 is the Citizens Planning Training Collaborative. Well, that's not even mentioned in the original thing we discussed and voted on.
Oh, so
That's correct. So
That's action 4.
if you'll let me explain this, please. The goal statement for economic development, the umbrella goal, there's one goal. It is to increase economic activity and diversify the tax base, provide more jobs and more shops and restaurants for residents to enjoy. That's the goal. The first policy for decision makers to carry that goal out is to provide funding and technical assistance to promote new economic development and support existing businesses. That's a policy framework. The actions that support that policy are to implement the Rapid Recovery Plan, sponsor training, and seek assistance from the Donahue Institute to do an economic development assessment for the town. Those are 3 actions that support the policy 1A. And that's how the entire implementation plan is organized. There's a goal, there's an umbrella policy, and there are 1 to 3 to 4 actions to implement that policy in each case.
So I think it's.
When we
That's
sent
the
you, when we
consultant's-
sent you those
1.1
drafts,
This is the consultant's
Corresponds to one
presentation.
dash A, 1.2
This is the consult,
corresponds.
she just gave you the consultant's presentation of what the goals are. Now, the question is, do we ever vote on, is that really what we voted on, discussed at all and debated or not?
Those goals go
I'm
back
not
to
saying
last fall.
Maybe these are great recommendations for other
Some.
towns.
Some, like point one we voted on. We
Yeah.
We discussed it. The Citizen Planner Training Collaborative, I don't know if it's in here.
So I think though, because that's, like, look at, it's confusing because we talked about it as
We voted on it.
recommendation 1, but that becomes, so 1.1 becomes policy 1.A, and now 1
Yep.
parenthesis 2, those are the action items. So
That's
1.1 corresponds to 1-A, 1.2 corresponds to policy 1-B, and so
Right.
that, there's no discussion because she didn't give us 3 action items for every policy in this document that we looked at. I don't know what
That's-
meeting that was.
Yeah, right.
It was just-
That's
it was
correct.
just a
That
sample.
is correct.
It's representative to get our sense. And sometimes there is this overlap between policy and action.
Right, there always is.
Yeah,
I just, my only concern is, not to bog it down, I just wanted to make sure that the stuff that we've already discussed, we're not rediscussing, and the changes that we've recommended have been made, and I don't think they have, but it doesn't apply to economic development, so we can move.
You want to see those paragraphs in the final report that we voted on.
If we made
In
changes.
some way, if it, yeah. I
well,
mean,
that was my
pull the
question
hardest
before.
points.
That's what you're
The
saying.
descriptions that we voted on when we had the
'Cause they
draft
appear different.
recommendations are not in the total set of recommendations that we're looking at right now. And that's why I asked you, Judy, would some of those be in that final report? Because those descriptions are very helpful to set the context.
There will be a short description of the policies, but not each, the recommendations stand on their own.
But the policies, yeah.
So the
Yes.
We
recommendations
have,
will be
we
in
have
the
not
report,
seen
or
those descriptions yet.
will these 3
seen
recommendations
those.
be in the report or not?
In the report,
In the final
there will be a
report, yeah.
short description of each policy and why
So
it's
they won't be.
important,
They're going to be your description of them.
like we already gave you.
So future readers
Few
won't
weeks
be able
back.
to read these paragraphs.
Well, this is how we're going to do it because this is the way it needs to be done. You can't put that kind of text in a chart. The chart would go on forever. You have to have a narrative section that explains the policies, and then the implementation program is the actions.
Yeah, but the report shouldn't be a chart. It should be report that
It's
people
not
can
a
read.
chart. This is just
You
one
just said
part of
that-
the
You
report.
said this text couldn't fit in your chart, but I don't care if it fits in your chart. I want the people to
It's
read the
chart for
text.
The action items, she didn't say the text was not gonna be in there, it's just not gonna be in the action item table.
In this chart, yes.
It's gonna be there,
It's
it's
not
not
gonna
gonna
be in the
be in the
report, that's
table.
all I'm asking. The text needs to be in the report.
The policies will
I
be in
said
the
that.
report with a broader description.
But, so for instance, are you just gonna say, sponsor and organize citizen planner training, collaborative trainings for all regulatory boards, and improve volunteers' ability to lead effective planning efforts?
That's an
Like-
action that supports providing funding and technical
Right,
assistance.
but like, I don't know what citizen planner training, collaborative trainings are. Like, is there gonna be some example or a of like, or is it just gonna say do that? Like, I don't know. That was my comments. I looked at some of these, like, I don't know what the UMass Amherst Donahue Institute does. Like, you know, these is my first time seeing things like this. Like, it's not.
And which recommendation does it tie to? I don't
Well,
know.
yeah, so, there's a couple of
It
things. One
ties
is
to
that
economic
the-
development.
Yeah, one is that
That's a goal, not a policy.
the long descriptions that were under economic development in the draft recommendations don't match to goals. They were matched to action items. That was my interpretation of it. In other words, the four recommendations and the initial recommendations, which have the broad descriptions.
So Phil, which does the UMass Amherst Donahue Institute?
It
line
relates
up
to
with?
policy
That was number
1A.
7. I'm sorry,
Three.
which one are you on now?
Policy number 1.
Oh, policy number 1, yeah. So the
Which
the Amherst
recommendation?
the
It should be
Amherst,
provide funding and technical assistance, but you're saying what it is in the actual.
yeah, the Amherst Donahue Institute, that was not in the initial draft recommendations.
Right.
That's because
It did not appear.
it supports the policy, which was in
Yeah.
the draft that you received.
Okay.
I think what we need to do, I think, just so we can move on, is, I think we're gonna need to see what comes back from Judy and her team when they go through the 5 sections we've already given her input on. And we can go through some of those, you know, maybe today, the ones that we know there are really big questions about. Yeah, and we can do that very quickly if you want, I think, and focus in on the areas that we had big questions on the 5. But it's hard to talk about some of these things without having both the new recommendations as well, so we can see what changed.
And it's hard for me to remember
But-
everything we said
Yeah,
2
I would
weeks ago. And
suggest
I
we
don't have
don't
time
go
to
back
rewatch a meeting.
tonight, because the reason is, like, I didn't bring all my specific notes on that. We were told we were going to talk about this.
Yeah,
So to rehash that, I fear I'm gonna leave something out that I think's important, so I don't think.
Yeah.
and I wasn't looking to read
And
that,
I
so
didn't
just wanted-
bring,
but I wanted
and
to
I
give you
didn't
a
bring,
chance
I don't
to-
have
if you
everything
had
open here that I
concerns.
got from Pat.
We
Chance for
weren't told to bring those concerns, so I don't think we're prepared to do
Right.
that.
Okay.
Well, one last point, just, I think this is the example of being prescriptive, though. If they should say, an organization like Citizens Planning Training Collaborative, or an organization like UMass Donahue, not telling us being specifically prescriptive, hire this consultant to do this. That shouldn't be in the report. It should be generic.
I think in this particular
So
case,
that,
to see.
can I just address that? That is fine, John, because the reason these particular groups are mentioned is that they're free. So you're not paying a
I'm aware.
consultant. You're getting,
I just
You're
don't want to
getting-
be too prescriptive.
okay, so I
in-
just
in
want to
the
say, I
policy,
just want you
that's
to all understand that we're not pushing more consulting help on you. We're trying to identify resources that would be helpful in terms of the town
Right.
doing
Yeah,
more to
yeah.
provide
I
technical
know that.
assistance and support.
We all talked about.
Well, I just think that would be helpful if you maybe said,
Written
a
description.
free service such as, you know, and explain what that training is in just a little bit.
That's
'Cause I-
fine.
Yeah, because
That's fine.
I don't know what that means, and I don't know what they do, like, so those are my comments about numbers 2 and 3, was,
Yeah, no, that's,
What
So
does this
can
mean,
I just
like, in
understand,
general?
none of you have ever been to a Citizen Planner Training Collaborative course?
I'm a member.
No.
Yeah, I can just say, I'm a member. That's where everybody goes for training in Massachusetts. If you're on a town board, you know, doing planning, doing, you know, planning board, doing what we're doing right here, master plan. So they offer, you don't even need to be a member to get their
Right,
training
but-
online.
so like, I'm a patent attorney, right? We talk about the
Yeah.
ordinary skilled artisan, you're an extraordinary skilled artisan. A person who's gonna read this, a town person, they have to be able to understand it and not have to go and do outside research, like, that's,
Yeah, no, so it should say what things are.
Yeah.
It should say what things are. Yeah, I'm only speaking.
That's fine. So I'm adding that, as you
Yeah.
talk, I'm
Yeah.
adding this text,
So
and
it
it's
should
very
say
helpful.
what it is, and if there are more options, it should say like, as opposed to saying a specific one,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've already put that in here.
yeah. So. So what we'll do the consent method of voting. If, we'll go through very quickly, if you have something you want to ask a question about, want to clarify, or want to have a vote on a specific one, then do a hold, and then we'll vote on other ones where we didn't have any holds, and then we'll do the hold ones one by one. So, is everybody good on the first one, rapid recovery plan? Okay. And then number 2 was sponsor and organize citizen planner training, collaborative trainings for all regulatory boards. So Judy's gonna clarify what that means. So on the premise that she's gonna fix that, are people good with that? And by the way, I think that's a good thing to do for all of our boards, is have more training. People get appointed or elected, and sometimes it can be hard to find out exactly what the role is, or understand all the legal ramifications. Number 3 is seek assistance from UMass Amherst Donahue Institute to conduct an economic development analysis for the town. Judy, do you want to just say a couple words about the Donahue Institute? And is that unique?
Donahue Institute is an entity of UMass Amherst. It's a partial think tank, partial technical assistance organization. They have taken over a program that was inaugurated by Northeastern University several years ago called the Economic Development Self-Assessment. And it is a way for communities to do a very deep dive in concert with their own business community, residents and so forth, as to what's working and not working in terms of the local economy. And it's a very helpful process. And what they do is they sort of compare you to communities that have some similar characteristics, so you get a sense of, are your rents high for this type of community? Is your transportation access sufficient for business growth compared to communities that are kind of like you? So it gives you a way to think about your own competitive strengths and weaknesses.
Any comments on that?
Nope.
And then we're just gonna keep going unless somebody wants to put a hold on something. So this is policy 1B, adjust local regulations to incentivize desired types of commercial development. And number 4 was engage a consultant for Metropolitan Area Planning Council to evaluate the central business district zoning requirements, permitting procedures and development standards, and update the zoning bylaws accordingly.
So are you all familiar with what the Metropolitan Area Planning Council is?
A little bit.
No.
Yes.
It is the regional planning agency. Massachusetts cities and towns are allocated to regional planning agencies. Everybody is. You're not being picked on. And MAPC is the regional planning agency that is based in Boston, but serves 101 communities around the city, essentially kind of inside 120, inside 495.
This ties back to 1.2, and we voted on that unanimously last time.
That's right. And number 5, update the town's home occupation regulations to bring them in line with current practice.
I wanted to
And that-
hold that because I feel it's a duplication from 6D in the housing section.
Okay, and just note that was related back to 1.4.
Yep.
So everybody knows.
Yeah,
So-
there is a little bit of duplication in here. Katie, just so you know, some of that was intentional.
I'm sorry,
But-
I didn't hear you. What did you say?
I said some of that duplication is intentional, but I mean, I don't have a problem taking it out of one place or another. But I think it particularly belongs here. There was a very interesting report released today by the Federal Census Bureau on working at home in the last year. And Massachusetts has one of the highest rates of the work at home population in the country. So I think this is something that all communities are going to really need to be looking at, is kind of how do they manage the work at home environment, both for telecommuters as well as home-based businesses.
So Judy, it looks like under 6D is that housing?
Yes.
6D in housing, it has, it's the same item, but it references the element of economic development. So would you suggest that you leave them in both, or you just say that it's in one place and it has impact on these several elements?
So I am never afraid of a little duplication in these things if it makes sense. And I'll tell you, I can go either way. I think it's a style decision for your committee. But there are economic development reasons for this, and there are also issues around living in a neighborhood that you know that you need to think about when you're writing home occupation regs. And I think that even within home occupation, there are different ways to do it. And some of it is more residential than others. I mean, some home occupation regulations are really like you don't even know there's anybody there. And some are really more like live workspace. So, I live in my home, but I have an art studio. So it
Judy,
depends on the type of home occupation.
From a style or a documentation perspective, should we agree to keep duplicates in different sections so they don't get missed, or do we use the element reference consistently?
I think that's
across the board?
entirely up to you. I'd like your feedback on
I
that.
always use element references, so you only have text in one place, otherwise you have the problem keeping it in sync. And these two are actually different to begin with. So so my advice always is only, have one system of record, if you will, one.
Agreed, okay.
Yeah.
That's
Otherwise,
fine. So if you want to not have duplication, that's perfectly fine.
I think it could refer to it, but it's better not to have the same text, I think, in two places where you have the danger of it not being the same. And these are not the same, right?
They're very similar.
But similar, but not the same.
One's just more elaborate.
But it is different wording.
Well, maybe in that
What was
case,
so,
you could say in economic development, see also section 6D of
Yes.
Yep.
housing.
You can
and
do
in
that.
Housing, say, see also, see related section
Yeah.
5,
And that's,
whatever it is,
that's
or
good.
1, whatever.
that's what
Yep.
we should do.
Yeah, that
You can
makes
do that.
sense. Because otherwise, I think it also looks like it might be a mistake or an oversight, and it's definitely not. So I think that by doing that, you're clarifying for the average person.
Yeah.
Are people good with
So-
the meaning of the?
are you saying to keep it in both, but do a cross-reference? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Just spell it out so that if someone sees it, they don't think,
And it won't get missed.
Good point. That's fine.
Yeah, and the one in section 6 is a little more precise, because it talks about, permitting them as a right, subject to conditions, so it's a little more specific on what the.
Right.
Which actually, I think is more helpful to have it.
Yeah,
So I would go with the one in section 6.
You want to
I think,
reword, you want to go with
them
that
right to
wording? Is
work
that what
at
you're
home,
saying?
Have a business at home.
The right to home occupations, to permit them, as a right.
So
But there are some subjects to conditions.
Is that
Yeah.
distinct from people who work for the state of Massachusetts and work for corporations who are working at home?
Do you mean telecommuting?
Yeah.
Well, whatever acronym, whatever. you
So
wanna
the
call it.
impact of a home business is a little bit different because
know.
you may have,
We should make that
Um,
distinction.
a home business is not the same as telecommuting.
Phil, I released my hold.
You're just, okay.
I want all those people
Thank
from the
you.
state to go back to work so we can get economic development done, because we can't do it when they're not in their offices in Boston.
On the other hand, if you have people working at home in your community, you might be able to take more advantage of them as support for your own local businesses.
if I ever get out of my basement.
Farmer in the dog for lunch,
So-
would you?
Katie released her
picture him in
home,
a
so
bathrobe.
unless anybody has any other comments, we'll go on.
Yep.
So number 6, engage a consultant to audit and update the Walpole zoning bylaw. This is obviously.
So this is one where I did not reference a free service because I
What?
don't think you're going to get one, but
Could you repeat that?
I think the whole
He didn't
team,
recommend
the
a
whole
free
team
service
feels
'cause she
very
doesn't think
strongly
we're gonna
about
get
this.
one.
Oh,
Well, couldn't you also, engage a consultant or form a committee?
Oh, I wouldn't do that. I mean, you want a steering committee to work with the consultant, certainly. I mean, no consultant should ever just go in a hole and rewrite a zoning bylaw.
Because in the
But
past,
I-
Walpole's always done that to rewrite zoning bylaws.
What? To have a
Form a
volunteer committee
on
do it?
Zoning rewrites.
Well, wouldn't the action just be update the Walpole zoning bylaw, and then it's up to the
Right.
committee as to how they're gonna get it done?
Well, you can do that if you want, but frankly, the bylaw reads like it hasn't had a professional look in a long time. That bylaw needs a lot of work.
Yeah, so somebody
And I think
having a
everybody on the
consultant,
team is
that's
gonna
okay.
tell you that.
Consultant,
There's,
His name was Connery.
Just-
So having
update.
consultants often can be very beneficial because you're bringing in a certain amount of expertise of people who deal with bylaws all the time and also
Part-
probably have seen a lot of.
part of what
different
happens
bylaws.
too is that we get it rewritten. And at a certain point in time, it's great. But then new issues come up, or somebody wants to change something. And now over time, you have different voices creeping into the document. So all of a sudden, even like the frame of reference when you're reading it is not the same. Language isn't used the same way. Terminology switches from one section to the next. It's what happens when bylaws get amended a lot over time. So you're not alone. I mean, every town should kind of do this once in a while. It's just kind of take a stop and get all the language consistent. And also laws change too. So things that may have been, that you could have regulated in a certain way 20 years ago, you may not be able to regulate that way now. So somebody just needs to really give this thing an audit and a set of recommendations to the planning board. And it is the planning board's bylaw, somebody to work with the planning board on that. And it's up to the planning board to decide if they want to have a steering committee or anything like that. I would think they didn't want to, but that's just me on my assumption.
And part of that would be to do the audit, which has, an independent
Yeah.
review of the bylaws and not even suggesting updates, but could just say, these are the things that need to.
I mean, the resources section says funding for consultants, so I wasn't sure if it was necessary to put engage a consultant, or just say audit and update the Walpole zoning stuff, and then the resources that you need as a consultant.
I agree.
And whatever you want. But I mean, you need money to do this.
Yeah, that's clear. And
If you just want to say update, that's fine.
Yeah, we always know that we can get a consultant.
Audit and update the Walpole zoning bylaws, just like the.
I think that's fine.
Just like the one above, update the town's home occupation regulations, funding for consultants.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, are people good with that? So number 7, analyze the physical, economic, market, and infrastructure opportunities and constraints of Walpole's limited manufacturing and industrial districts, and identify options both for encouraging development and increasing the value of development. And this mapped 1.3 in the draft recommendations.
If I may, can I ask why wasn't business and retail put into this? Why is it
Well-
limited manufacturing and industrial uses?
Because those districts seem to be the weakest, for lack of a better phrase. The land use pattern in them is a little bit weird. It's kind of, those districts look tired to us, so that was why. I don't have an aversion to suggesting this for the commercial areas as well, but it
Well,
seemed to us,
but
from
my
what we
se-
saw, that the industrial districts probably needed the attention the most.
My second part of that is that downtown action plan of 2015 should be updated and incorporated. And it should be in here and it's not. I
Okay.
mean, when the EDC
Well-
did that plan back in 2015, it gave great recommendations of what Walpole's missing to make downtown vital. And, even though it's 7 years ago, it probably should be updated again because there's been a couple new businesses that have come in. But that's kind of why I was getting to including business and retail, even though I guess you don't want to get into the CBD district or the downtown, or you don't want to get into it, I don't know. I think business
Well,
and
the only
retail should
reason,
be
the only
included.
reason I think we didn't reference the older plan is that the rapid recovery plan is focused pretty much almost entirely on downtown.
But that was still a
So
little bit
that-
different than the action plan that was done in 2015, which gave specific examples of businesses that are needed and that businesses the town should be
Yep.
seeking out to come to town, which that really wasn't in the rapid recovery thing, I don't believe.
Yeah, plus.
Not,
I think
not to
that
the level that you may be looking for.
The town over the years has not wanted any kind of heavy industry or industrial activity. Every time somebody comes in with a business like that, everybody comes out of the woodwork and opposes it. There's really the community doesn't have an appetite to be a heavy industrial town. They want to have a light footprint of commercial presence, white collar, office park, this type of thing. They're really not interested even in hotels and things that, transfer stations, energy plants, a number of things have been proposed, and they're really, I don't think the general town has an appetite for the heavy industry at all. That really wouldn't be
Well,
the focus probably
yeah.
shouldn't be on manufacturing or industrial at all, to be honest.
Well, it might be, that may be the case. The question is really, I guess, what's the land best suited for? But, we're not advocating for heavy industry. That language isn't in here. We're talking about those districts. But those districts in particular probably need another look. That's our opinion. I mean, I do a lot of economic development work, and that's my opinion. I don't think those districts are performing the way they could, but
Well, because of that, you shouldn't exclude the other districts, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't
commercial
disagree.
uses,
We
whether
were
it's business.
we thought those districts in particular needed a look. I'm not averse at all. If you want to include all the districts, that's entirely up to you guys. If that's what you want to do, I just need to know.
So do people want to add all of the districts?
Yes.
in
Yes.
this?
I don't
Okay.
think you should mention industrial district, quite honestly. I don't think that's acceptable to anybody in the town.
Well, that's beside the point, though. At least.
It's in the
we should be-
zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
We should be we should be looking at it, and that should be an informed decision.
Or it can be looked at with the lens of,
Well, but this is.
What else do we do with it?
yeah,
Doing
like, right, that's
studies
not,
and
I think
studying
part of it
it.
is, part of it is also looking at, should some of the land be rezoned? Are we using up some of our industrial limited manufacturing land for housing, and maybe some areas which are now zoned, maybe they would be better suited for housing, and that's again, those are all decisions, would come out of this, I think.
But usually the market makes those decisions. Government doesn't have to make all the decisions in development. In fact, development's a lot better off when government isn't involved trying to control everything and tell everybody what to do. So, it's an overreach. We have zones, and we have business opportunity zones. They do their own analysis and assess what should go there and why and when. I don't think the town has to get in the business of trying to micromanage everything that's gonna happen in the future, particularly economic development-wise. The private sector and the banks and capital, ultimately, they have to decide anyway. The town comes up with, probably isn't gonna pass muster as far as getting financed for anything like that. So it's nice language, but I'm just saying, honestly, Donnell speaks with common sense. That's really what Walpole is. It's a bedroom community with a nice mix of business and moderate business with a soft impact, and it really doesn't have a big appetite for any kind of heavy kind of business or industry or manufacturing.
But we have a lot of
Industrial.
land that's zoned in these districts, and that's,
The people can pursue that if they wish to, sure.
Or 40B.
or 40B. So are we good adding all the districts to this, all the business? Let's be specific, which ones we're adding.
I don't care if you want to add commercial zones or commercial businesses,
Is that what?
Sure.
commercial business or retail uses.
So this isn't just uses, it's really about the specific districts or the study areas, so
Okay, then
it's
it would-
fine to add
be-
the districts if that's what you want.
That's fine, then we should be adding all the commercial districts to it then,
That's fine.
commercial use districts,
Thank you.
if everyone's fine with that.
Yeah, everybody fine with that?
Yep.
Are you fine with that, John?
Yeah, the phrase commercial use district, sure.
Okay.
It's late.
And then number 8 is work with the state on longer,
Can we
Yeah.
go back to implementing and updating the downtown action plan of 2015? If we can
Sure.
include that as an action item? Or include it somewhere within the existing action items?
I think that's fine. I guess I just want to, there's no conflict between that and the more recent plan. So, you can either just say implement rapid recovery and the downtown plan, or you can make it a separate action.
so it could be
Okay,
part of
whatever you
number
do.
1.
Part of number 1, was it?
Yeah, 1A1.
1A.
Yeah, 1A1. And then just add, implement and update the downtown action plan of 2015?
Right,
Do you want that added to 1A1?
yeah.
Okay,
Instead of adding an
Provide
item under
funding
one
and
C.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's providing funding and technical assistance.
I think it's
that's
1C.
more proactively planning beneficial commercial
Well,
development.
Just add a ninth item under.
this is an important point, actually, and thank you for saying this, because a lot of the rapid recovery plan really is sort of a technical assistance document, whereas the action plan you're referring to, I think, is it's a more specific, it's kind of a different document. It's really more specific economic development strategies. So if you would want to have that reference in this section, maybe we should make it a separate action. You know, we could make that 1A2.
Well, actually, I think it should be under policy 1-C, proactively plan
Okay.
for beneficial commercial development in key areas of town, whereas it's
Okay.
specifically for central business district.
That's fine.
Can we make it a 9? Or,
Yeah, I'd say make it a 9, yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
Donnell, would you repeat your wording on it?
Implement and update the 2015 downtown action plan.
Thank you.
everybody good with that?
Donnell, do you object to saying update and implement?
It should be updated.
Do I object to what?
You said implement and update.
Do you object to
but it should be-
wording it as update and implement the downtown action plan
Just
instead of
reversing.
implement and
Yeah,
update?
no objection, that's fine. It should be
Okay.
updated and then implemented.
Okay. Thank you.
And then number 8 was work with the state on longer-term planning and disposition of the Cedar Junction Correctional Facility and develop the local vision for the site. It's just anticipating the,
No changes to the language, but the responsibility column uses the antiquated term Board of Selectmen, it should say Select.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay.
everyone's good with those?
Yep.
Okay.
This is helpful. Thank you.
So why don't we just take a quick vote for all the items in section 1, and then we can just do a very simple vote. We don't have to do a roll call vote. So all in favor, okay, would someone please make a motion to accept?
I'll make a motion to accept all the recommendations under economic development as amended and through this conversation.
Second.
And Mike seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hold on, shouldn't it say the table? This is the table, right? It's not the,
Well, it is,
or this is the chart or whatever, or she,
Section recommendations is what,
yeah,
Okay.
it's for goal 1, if you want to be.
But it's
Okay.
policy 1, right? We're not doing, are we doing all of goal 1 at once?
All
I'll go one at
Oh,
once.
then
I'll go
fine,
one.
yep.
do you
So
want me
if you
to,
wanna
do
change
you want me
it
to
to goal
rephrase
1?
it? Okay, I'll make a motion to accept the section recommendations under goal 1, economic development, as amended in the course of our discussion this evening.
Second. And Mike seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same, so it's 900. No, I'm sorry, 800.
Seven.
Yeah.
Eight.
Yeah, 800. Right.
Count yourself.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we go to, we go to goal 3, which is, or goal 5, climate change. So goal 5, climate change and resiliency, build Walpole's human, financial, capital, and operational capacity to advance sustainability and climate change resilience priorities. And the first action, or the first.
Phil, there's a note there. Is that something that we,
Consider adding or changing to include invest in Walpole's human, financial, and infrastructure resources to promote climate resiliency.
so that,
So I turn to Judy on that.
Climate change, climate resilience.
so the original goal was build local government's capacity to provide leadership for sustainability and climate change resilience and engage community members to do their part.
I'm going to look at the goals that we have on file. Hold on. Trying to move through multiple folders here, folks, so please forgive.
I like how it reads now, but, I mean, in the chart, but just wanted to make sure everybody
No,
was
that's
aware of
good- good to bring
the
that up.
change.
Where did the note originate?
Right.
So the original goal that came out of an earlier document was build local government's capacity in order to provide leadership for sustainability and climate change resilience and engage community members to do their part. That was the,
You are correct. You are correct, and I'm not sure why that happened. That's my fault. So I will make sure that it's consistent with the original document. I apologize for that.
Well,
and the footnote.
not so fast. I mean, I think it's, there's a footnote there, and I think it reads,
Oh, I know why. Yeah, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
well,
interrupt you.
tell us why. Should we just vote to change it? Because I think it's worth looking
So
at.
these have been through multiple team meetings by the consultants, and I think this relates to a conversation that happened a couple of weeks ago. So but I just really should have said, we're suggesting this change, and I didn't.
So
It just got
Anybody
put into the
opposed to
document.
change?
So in the footnote, I'm confused now, sorry.
So the
There's three
footnote matches
versions
the
now.
goal.
Yeah,
Right.
But the original goal said something different. It
You
said
are
build
correct.
Local
You are
government's
correct.
capacity to provide
Right,
leadership. This, to
Yes.
me, reads
are you,
better.
but I'm asking, are you
Yeah.
saying the footnote reads better, or are you
Oh,
asking?
no,
that-
the footnote reads better than the
Than
original.
what's on the top of the page
the top.
or in the previous document?
Because what's at the top of the page is a third thing.
Oh,
There's three different things.
Three different things.
oh.
Yeah, it's build Walpole's human, financial capital, that doesn't sound right, financial capital and operational capacity to advance sustainability and climate change resilience priorities. And then there was a footnote.
I just caught it.
Consider adding or changing to
I know
include
why.
invest in Walpole's human, financial, and infrastructure resources to promote climate resiliency.
Right.
So promote sounds weaker to me than advance, to advance.
I feel like Judy's sitting on some information here.
I'm not trying not to interrupt your discussion, but I see what happened here. There was a team meeting on this one. And I think that one of the team members had inserted that footnote that she was suggesting changing the wording to that, and it just never made it into the goal, the top of the page.
But how did the top of the page change?
It was just multiple discussions. There have been so many this team meets frequently.
Okay.
So I can't go back and find the date. You are correct. It's not the same as
But
the
is it the
original goal.
recommendation
I
of
think
the
all I
Barrett
want
group
to know is, do you want the wording changed
There's no
to the way it is
consensus
right
among
now
them,
in
just
this
that.
sheet?
I like
Or do you want the original
do
goal
too.
statement?
I like the original.
Which one do you guys like?
the one that's
I
currently
like the one that's
in the
on,
table, in the chart.
in the chart, on goal 5, not
In
the
chart,
footnote.
yeah, not the original one.
Correct.
Yeah, because the original one just limits
Yeah.
it to provide leadership. It doesn't go as far as.
Yeah.
as
The original goal was to build local government's capacity to provide leadership for
That's a
sustainability and climate
wording.
change resilience and engage community members to do their part. That's what the original one was. And it's my fault. I didn't catch, and I should have footnoted it here so you wouldn't be confused as to where that change came from. It was a suggestion of the team.
Yeah, and not sure if capital sounds right in that list of words there.
You're already addressing under finance.
Well, that's why I think the footnote is suggesting to changing it to infrastructure.
Human financial.
I think we should meet somewhere in the middle, maybe. Invest in Walpole's human, financial, and infrastructure resources.
That's to promote climate resiliency.
To advance, to
promote climate
advance, and to advance sustainability and climate
and promote
change.
climate resiliency.
Yeah, because promote sounds a little weak to me,
Yeah.
you know, as opposed to really doing something.
It's not a pep rally.
But-
It's not a
The-
pep
the-
rally.
The amended ones suggest spending, using town or hiring town staff, having financial budgets and capital investment on behalf of the town to address these national issues, which is quite different than the way it was worded under Goal 5.
I
To the
mean,
degree that we can do this without spending a ton of money and being redundant.
John, I think we need to
but it could be a
first-
people investment, right? Or you could be investing people's time, or it doesn't have to be money, right?
Wait, no, it is, every town employee has a salary. So you're talking about town employees,
No,
you're investing town employees' time, you're spending money.
but if you're a board that's in charge of
Sustainability.
sustainability effort in town, or recycling project or something, then that's.
Right.
You're not gonna do those things without having some paid staff somewhere.
Right.
Right, but it's a mix,
Sustainability
right?
is not a,
But it's a mix.
we already have some
Yeah.
paid staff working on some of
This
these.
sounds like a
Well, let's-
major undertaking, you're gonna have budgets and, financing and capital,
Let-
that's really, and people.
Before we
So
get
the
down
word
there,
invest, we should, I don't,
I wonder if we first should agree on the wording, just so, you know.
that's what we're discussing right now.
Okay,
The word invest connotes money.
well, invest can connote a lot of things, right? And like you said, you were saying yourself, time.
Yeah.
Right, but then you just said every one of those things that's a volunteer and a paid staff member,
Right,
so.
so I think we go back to build,
I
right?
like build better
Yeah.
because I think invest, yes, it can connote a lot of things, but I think it probably is too narrow a term for what we're talking about when you look at all of the recommended actions. Because I think most people's minds do naturally go to pour a ton of money into this problem, and that's not necessarily what we're suggesting. We're suggesting, how do we position ourselves to take advantage of maybe available monies that are already out there,
Right.
right?
That's right, in fact,
So,
there's gonna be a lot of money out there with the.
right,
yeah.
so I think for that reason, I prefer build,
Okay,
that's me.
I'm good with that. Do we change the capital and operational capacity to the infrastructure capacity that's down below?
I think so.
Or infrastructure resources.
Infrastructure
Resources.
Yeah. So build Walpole's human, financial, and infrastructure resources to advance sustainability and climate change resilience priorities.
I like it.
And what about capital capacity? I mean, operational capacity?
That's infrastructure.
Infrastructure.
Capital's
Yeah,
infrastructure.
is that- Okay. To advance, we kept the advance.
Yeah, so it'll say,
Kept the whole rest of that.
kept the whole rest of it, so we'll just take out capital and operational capacity and
Yeah.
replace it with infrastructure resources.
That's really much clearer.
Thank you.
Are
Thank you.
people good with that change in language? We're-
Yes.
John, is that?
No, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm gonna abstain on this anyway, so you don't have to satisfy me.
Okay.
I'll chirp up if I really am offended. It's okay.
Okay,
Write that down, he said we don't satisfy. Judy, just wanna point out this one also says Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question on who is gonna implement this in town? I see
Well, it's going
economic
to vary.
development in here a lot, but
Yeah,
that's gonna now become under economic development jurisdiction, climate control, or climate change and resiliency?
if you could
They
get
have a
on
new
that, that'd be
commission.
great.
Right?
Clock's ticking.
Yeah.
I mean, is that in the right spot for that to be at? Should there be a,
Sustainability
Specific-
Commission, it's right
Huh?
in they're creating a Sustainability Commission, it's right in here. It's on
there's nothing-
5.3.
5.3?
There are other recommended.
Along with Walpole Green, and they got it all.
I think
So-
you're looking at the old. John, are you on the draft recommendations?
Economic development.
I'm looking at, I'm trying to square both, because
Judy, shouldn't Board of Health be somehow incorporated in here under responsibilities. So for example, especially with number
Yep.
2,
Yep,
I think we should add them to the mix.
thank you.
And is Community and Economic Development Department, like, is that because it doesn't say, because like the one we just looked at had Economic Development Commission or Committee listed as sometimes for responsibility. So you may be off the hook, Donnell, we might not put it all on your head.
But, yeah, but is this
Yeah.
just like Patrick, or
Pat,
or was somebody
right.
looking at?
Yes, it's the
grants?
department,
So if you
it's
look
the
at number
staff.
5, work closely with the Green Communities Regional Coordinator, which we have hired a position for that.
Okay, so
then-
somebody has been
So,
hired for
yeah,
that?
we're sharing that position with Norwood and Sharon.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
So we have a.
Okay,
yeah,
so these
and then it's-
policies are gonna be put upon that person?
Well, no, well, there's a whole, I think there's a number of pieces. Then establish a sustainability commission, that's in number 9. In number 8, consider having a staff position responsible for staying current with trends and technologies.
But number
So-
1 is economic, does grant writing still fall under economic development?
I think that department does grant writing, am I
So
wrong? That's
why
always
it's
been my
here, right?
impression.
Because of the grant?
Right.
Yeah, and also, I know the Green Communities Coordinator would be doing a lot of grant writing,
Okay.
because that's,
Then why under responsibility wouldn't you be mentioning Sustainability Commission?
It doesn't exist yet.
so maybe we need to, even though that hasn't been established yet, but it needs to be mentioned here. If it mentions Green Communities Regional Coordinator, it should mention the sustainability.
So we can add that and then cross-reference the recommendation where the
Yeah.
Sustainability Commission appears.
Yeah, how does that typically work, Judy, if you're recommending that a commission or a committee be established, and then some of these other action steps would involve that committee? Do you typically list them as a responsible party, even though it's only theoretical at this point?
So, no, it's a good question. We wouldn't say that a non-existent entity is responsible. What we would say is that when that entity is created, then it has a role. So, there's 2 ways to handle this. You can either put it under responsibility and then cross-reference where the Sustainability Commission is suggested, or you can list it as a resource needed.
Maybe it's a resource needed at
Yeah.
this point?
Yeah, you can do it that way. If that's more sensible to you, it's fine.
There's also, maybe, it will be federal funding as well, which it may actually go through the state, but we know there's
Right.
already been a sizable amount of money allocated for, for sustainability, for climate change.
Okay.
So are we all right with this now, with adding the Sustainability Commission and other, it may take other staff people as well, as it alluded to that in there. So we'll go on to 2. Work with private service providers to increase options for waste reductions, including residential and commercial composting and weekly recycling. And again, the select board.
I think the Board of Health should be added to this. They're responsible for recycling.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just added that. Thank you.
yeah. So we're good? Number 3,
Is there no money there? Should be funding, right?
Number 2,
Yeah. I'm assuming private service providers would call for funding?
I think at the most, I would say possibly funding.
so that would be our garbage pickup, our contractors pick up waste, yeah. To overcome staffing and funding limitations, collaborate with the state, engineers and landowners to construct and maintain stormwater and drainage infrastructure, such as pump stations, dams, bridges, and culverts. So this sounds very much also like the facilities, the infrastructure,
Can I ask a question? Is the engineering department considered a department of the Public Works?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it better to spell them out? Every town's different with this. You know, engineering tends to be in DPW and a lot of the places we worked. But some people just sort of think it is a separate thing. So is it okay to say DPW, or would you rather say engineering department?
I think it's fine to say DPW because they fall under that hat.
Okay.
I was thinking DPW Washington Street.
I know.
Pat, we forgot to tell you while you're away, we volunteered you for everything. Thanks.
Which,
While you're away, that's what we did. We volunteered you for everything. You're gonna be added to every one of these
Gonna be
columns, just while you walked out. Just
oh,
thanks.
am I the responsibility or the
Yeah.
resource?
For everything.
All of it.
From here into the future, and yes.
And funding.
It's not the department, it's just you.
Yeah, I mean, I just
Yeah.
remember, you know, the one thing I was told is any planning thing you ever want to do is pretty much, well, you're gonna have to find a grant to do it, because there's no way you're gonna get funding elsewhere. Yeah.
We just, whenever somebody leaves the room, they get volunteered for everything, so.
True in a lot of towns.
It's kind of interesting, just a comment that conservation would be mentioned there. I mean, basically, it seems like they're trying to morph the stormwater and drainage infrastructure into conservation, which really isn't a function of conservation.
You think sewer and
And
water?
it's really, conservation's an inhibitor to developing most of these things, these infrastructures.
Are we considering water and sewer as public works?
I'm not talking necessarily water and
Oh.
sewer, I'm talking DPW.
They're
I'm
under
talking about
DPW.
infrastructure in general.
Okay.
There.
So conservation may be involved, because there are regulations and rules, right, that have to
There's
be.
regulations for all the departments,
So
but I don't think
sewer and water
conservation
is
plays any lead role in this. This would be engineering and public works.
Yeah.
I think you should scratch conservation, put engineering.
Doesn't conservation do where the wetlands stop and begin?
Yeah, but that applies to everything. It's nothing unique. They have no knowledge of building bridges or storm, that's not really their forte.
So they wouldn't be
That's
responsible
interesting.
for
They
this, but
usually
would
play a
review-
pretty
they'd be
significant
involved
role in these
reviewing the
issues.
The
plan
whole,
that's-
all 15 departments of town review everything.
Yeah,
But they're particularly because of stormwater.
yeah, yeah.
Engineering would be the
Right.
thing to mention
Drainage,
there.
that's yeah. I know they're putting signs out right now on plaques on where water runs from the drainage into rivers and streams. You know, that they're putting markers to make sure people know that if you pour something down that drain, it's going into one of our rivers. So people go to number 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
4, implement the adaptation, partnership, and funding recommendations in the Integrated Water Infrastructure Vulnerability and Climate Resiliency Plan to mitigate effects of future flooding as a result of climate change.
That ties back to 5.1. That's clear.
Fine with it.
And then number 5, and 5 corresponds to 5.2, the original recommendations. Work closely with the Green Communities Regional Coordinator to exceed energy reduction benchmarks, including those in the CR3 Energy Reduction Plan. And it might be good to explain what that is, Judy, the CR3 Energy Reduction Plan.
Do you mean the Commonwealth's plan?
Yeah,
Well, I can speak to that, Phil. So
Yeah,
the
the C-
CR3 energy reduction plan, so when a town becomes a green community, there's 5 elements that they need to
Right.
pass. And so your
Yep.
CR3 energy reduction plan is basically your comprehensive energy reduction plan. And Judy, correct me if I'm wrong,
Right.
is it within, energy reduction within 5 years? Or what is the?
it's 5.
I'm
5
pretty
years.
sure it's 5
5
years.
is
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
There
you
are
have to be
some things where it may be a
20%
longer
less,
horizon,
10%
but
reduction
5
over
years.
5 years, yeah.
yeah, it's typically 5 years.
Can I ask you a question? Why is it work closely with Green Community Regional Coordinator to exceed energy reductions? Why is it not to meet?
Good point.
I think it's because if we're going to meet any of the goals of the state,
But isn't the goal to meet it,
well,
unless you're saying to exceed it?
the Green Communities plan is actually not a very challenging goal based on what we need to do to get to meet the climate change risk. So that's, in some ways, the Green Communities Act is almost outdated with the goals it set.
Yeah,
So the Global Climate Warming Act and the new, Climate Change Act, 2021, I not have the right name, has set more larger goals. And so if we're gonna meet that, we need to exceed what the Green Communities goals were. So 20%.
So who makes the benchmark that exceeds
Yeah, so
the requirement?
So the Green Communities has a benchmark of, I think it's 1990. So we have to be 20% less energy consumption based on our consumption at 1990. I think it was 1990. So there are benchmarks throughout the, up to 2050 as well.
Philip, is that a stated goal of the regional coordinator to exceed the benchmarks?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that. I can find out.
Different tangent. And
Yeah.
Judy, my memory of this is I probably could look it up a little more, but they've actually, I believe there's implementing a second phase of the Green Communities program.
Yeah, we got our first
So,
pay.
no, I believe they've actually expanded based upon the funding that is available. So I think, Judy, am I getting that information correct? I'm trying to get a little hazy on it. But
I believe you are. I'm
Yeah,
actually
so there's-
making a note right now to take this up with the team, but go ahead.
yeah, so I mean, there's because of the additional funding that can be available through energy reduction, I think Green Communities is looking at expanding the program itself. So this is a totally different tangent based upon this action item, but just to kind of, I don't know if it could be worked into it, Judy, but looking into implementing that additional program in order to utilize that new funding that's available. It could be an option for the town. I know it's fairly new that.
So Green Communities
DOR
will make more
doing-
money available, is that what?
Yeah, and
What
so
about the fund?
DOER is basically coming up with an extension of the Green Communities program, and that's, again, this is different tangent based upon this action item, but maybe something like that could be worked into that recommendation as well, just a suggestion.
So are you indicating that,
And in
Like-
terms of that exceed word, so I mean, if we
Well-
wanted to,
like that the benchmarks themselves are malleable, right? And so
Yeah.
we shouldn't be too tied to language about where we are in relation to the benchmarks as they stand today, because 2 years from now, they could look completely different, and
They're
our
const-
goal would still be
To
to
meet the
meet whatever they happen to be at
Yeah.
that time, or
Right.
to be appropriate. It sounds like, Philip, you're saying the benchmarks as you understand them now are no longer appropriate because they need to be updated for whatever reason. But-
Because the state has upped the state
Right.
goal for how much
Right.
carbon reductions the state needs to do.
So us
Which-
deciding, should we be meeting or exceeding what they are today is sort of moot. It shouldn't be that. It should be that we're just trying to be in line with
growing.
best
Yeah, to
practice
meet
and
the
whatever.
energy goals,
whatever
I
they
mean,
happen to
And
be.
do,
because that's Phil's opinion. Now, I don't think maybe the people from the state would agree with him that the benchmarks are no good.
well, I didn't say they're no, I didn't say they're no good.
So I think when you meet a goal, I mean, when you meet the state standards, that's probably sufficient for the town of Walpole. If they want to exceed them, they can decide at the time. But there might be a lot of reasons, and I'll give you an example. Our finance committee is approving millions of dollars in new vehicles, gas vehicles, and they've got in their capital budget for the next 5 years, and they're not looking at these things that you people are pushing about 2050 and 2030. We're gonna get, it's a big economic cost for the town, to just have these arbitrary, and we're gonna exceed their things, and it's gonna cost the town more money. So I don't, you can be overzealous. Just like Donnell's father was in the housing business at one time. Walpole in 1971 we had a green Walpole committee in 1971, that's 60 years ago. And up in North Walpole, we built solar envelope homes. we built homes that had the heat from, from the ground, whatever.
Geothermal.
Geothermal. Alan Rockwood, who was a selectman, built a solar envelope home. And we had a whole green thing, no town and government involved, no government money, no federal agencies, 55,000 consultants, just contractors building energy efficient homes and people deciding to buy them or not buy them. That's 60 years ago. So we aren't inventing you're not inventing the wheel. This is like Groundhog Day.
So my point was simply that I think, based on what Pat is telling us, these things are in flux, and that it doesn't, debating whether the benchmarks as they exist now are appropriate or inappropriate is kind of beside the point, because they're changing, and they're gonna change. and
Well, that's my point.
yeah,
People didn't like the
And there's a lot of
things
things-
because rats come in the basement. They didn't like the energy, they thought they would like energy efficient, they didn't like it
Can
too
we say
much.
meats or?
I'm
or
anti-rat,
seeds?
can we put that in here?
And
No
there's-
rats.
Right, meat or
There's
seeds.
a lot of
Somebody
state
down the road's gonna
incentives.
say-
Right, so do we need to rework this
The
to,
green community was 20%,
Right.
that's over 5 years, that's,
Right.
yeah.
like, I don't think it's up to us at all to say 20% is appropriate, or 10% reduction, or 30%, but like, to connect it to whatever's going on with green communities and the regional coordinator, and doing things in conjunction with our partner communities to be where we need to,
Could I make a suggestion? So
please do.
if we were just looking at the wording of it, maybe work closely with the Green Communities Regional Coordinator to meet energy reduction benchmarks as they exceed.
I don't even care if you want to add the words "to meet or exceed."
Or exceeds,
Meet
yeah.
or exceed,
So why
okay.
don't we do that?
Yeah.
Meet or exceed, and that way we'll cover.
Yeah.
Can we just also update the record to reflect, for those of us that were born in the 1970s, it's not 60 years ago? Thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
I am,
Thank you.
because I have a withdrawal from my 401K that I need to make. That's the case.
Closer to retiring than you thought you were.
Okay, that's really the important part that I took away from that.
And I just want to say one thing, so there's a tremendous amount of funding and grants that is gonna come about because of the go to address climate change. So, we as a town, this doesn't mean that we're gonna be funding all these things ourselves. We're gonna be,
Yep.
the key is really having people in the right place in town government who can recognize where the grants are and can write them up, and can also have projects that can take advantage of them very
Right.
quickly. So, so we go to that? Number 6, collaborate with MAPC's Clean Energy Department to implement technical assistance and collaborative procurement actions to reach energy reduction goals, and this is 5.1 in the original set of recommendations.
5.2.
Was it 5.2? I wrote down 5.1.
Oh, no, it's 5.1, right, sorry.
That's right.
Clean.
I'd have to go back and look. Any comments on this?
Would, any reason why Department of Public Works wouldn't be included in that? To tackle and collect procedural actions to reach energy reduction goals?
Yeah, so we have Board of Selectmen, and probably certainly in all these, the Green Communities Regional Coordinator or the Sustainability Commission, if it got appointed or gets funded, would be part of that too. Are you good with that, Judy, making those changes?
I'm making notes here.
Yeah. And you said what, the DPW?
Department of Public Works should be added as a
Yep.
responsibility.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then number 7, establish a town-wide net zero emissions goal. All departments and boards.
Is there a date range on that?
too.
That might be an example of something that didn't get caught up yet.
Yeah,
So this is out?
Are people good with this?
Yep.
Well,
No, I think there's a hole, because I think this is one of the things that we either changed or took out of the original
Action.
drafts, yeah.
so 7 is gone, right? That's my understanding?
We're double checking it now, I think.
yeah.
Okay. I think you're right.
Now, is anybody interested in reconsidering this? I just want to point out a couple things. One is that the town meeting voted to get to 100% renewable energy by 2050. And that was a few I think it was 2019, I can't remember what year it was, but town meeting didn't make, it was a non-binding resolution, just so you know. And then second is that the state is moving towards net zero emissions, regardless of what we do. That's the state.
I don't think we should.
I think, in my memory, I think we just said that the state will have a policy for this and we would follow suit.
Yeah, I guess maybe it should be monitor, like, state action on townwide net. And I think while town meeting did vote for it, and in full disclosure, I voted for it, I think if it was not a non-binding resolution, you can't say that the same result would have necessarily happened. We weren't voting on it as a.
Interesting.
I also think it's not fair to the people who aren't here, who might have weighed in on the discussion, to revisit it, so I think we should let it be.
It'll be in the notes. If you look at them on Friday.
Yeah, I have them here, but I'm not going to bother.
Okay.
If I bring things up like that, only because I feel it is very important from the climate change sustainability issue.
I don't think it's not important. I think the way that we phrase it is that the state has its own goal and that we should follow suit.
Okay. And then number 8, consider having a staff position responsible for staying current with trends and technologies, possibly becoming a member of a Clean Energy Center or DOER working group, Department of Energy Resources, Energy Group, working group.
So I actually have a comment on that. So Judy, we have an energy manager in town that we share with Laura
Right.
and Sharon. So is that similar to this position, or is this additional responsibilities?
I think the intent that Emily had was additional responsibilities. I can follow up with her if you want. But on the other hand, we're going to come at this probably as aggressively as we think you should. But if you feel like you've got someone who's handling this already, then I think we should just take it out.
I think we should leave it in though, because I know that position is 1/3.
Yep.
Yeah.
And keeping up with technology, I mean, there's a lot of things happening, and it takes, maybe it's not a full-time person, but it takes having that expertise and the time also to go after all these grants. So this is very specific about, staying current with trends and technologies, possibly becoming a member.
Well, that's why towns are investing in these positions. I mean, you're right. There is a lot to stay on top of.
I would support that, Philip, for 2 reasons. One being, this arrangement that we have where we're partnering is relatively new. So if we get a little bit further along and decide, it's not sufficient, we can move forward with maybe having somebody who is either full-time or maybe more than 0.3 for Walpole. And again, because this one is not as much of a directive to Katie's point, this is one of the examples that Katie's talking about where it's just consider. So, I don't know, it feels to me a little bit more like a monitoring situation, right? Like, monitor and evaluate sort of the need for this, like, increased staff. If we already have something, we can just take a look at it, and maybe it's sufficient, and maybe we don't go any further, but.
It's actually better wording than consider.
The thing about shared positions, I mean, this is the classic thing of big government. There's never enough money to spend, enough people to hire. It's always a need for more positions. And we're Massachusetts because we have town governments that are regional and township government, like the Midwest, where they pay 1/3 of the taxes we do, and they get the same services, but they share, and they don't, every town doesn't have to have all the goodies and all the expenses and all the staff. And this is a perfect example, like we're trying to share a dog officer with Nora, it works fine, you can share this position, that's fine. We don't have to have our own designated person. If it's only 1/3 of a person, then we should have this shared thing. Why write a new position into this plan? I don't see it. If you get your big grants, then you'll have staff to pursue this. If you, Nanny State gives you all the green that you want, you'll have staff to do it. If not, it maybe isn't a national priority anymore.
I think, you know, it's one of those things where the chicken and the egg, right? Because you need staff in order to get grants to,
We just created a staff position and shared up, right away you want to hire somebody else. I mean, it's a turnoff to conservative people who don't like paying, you know, double taxes.
So what do you think about wording this as monitor and evaluate the need for a staff position instead of consider?
I would be good with that.
Do I get a consensus? So it's just hard for me to see because you're way back there and I'm here, so I can't really see facial expressions or anything. I don't quite know where you are on this.
Are people, John, would you be good with that?
No.
No. Should we,
We just created a position for it to cover that. I think you should just eliminate it.
people want to do a vote on this?
What position
I
did
know,
we just
I know we have a
create?
dilemma that everybody's not here.
Shared
so-
position,
I say what?
okay.
I think monitor and consider is good wording.
So what are we gonna do with number 9 then?
Establish this, that's a different,
That's different.
that's a,
I don't know, responsibility-wise.
So maybe in addition to having, like,
That's
consider having a staff
another
position,
commission,
it's also
Usually it's a
evaluating,
volunteer-
periodic
usually
evaluation
it's
of the
an appointed
responsibilities
committee.
of shared positions and seeing
Staff out.
yeah.
if they're, you know,
Yeah, if it's a responsibility, that's something that I can take on, that's something that the sustainability, I mean, the energy coordinator can take on, maybe that's not, I don't know, Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe that's something that's really something that can be done within existing staff capacity, it's just the responsibility.
Yeah, I mean,
So maybe it's like evaluate existing
that's-
staff capacity and
Yeah.
if necessary, consider having a staff position responsible for staying current, you know, something like that. Because I don't know what the shared person, maybe they're doing these things now, but like if everything's changing, maybe part of their job goes away because it's now obsolete or whatever, like, and we could just move it on to something like that. I don't know.
I just thought Carrie's language was fine. It was monitor and evaluate. If you don't need it, then you don't do it.
Should we take a vote? What do? If I advocating for this only because I think that it takes a certain amount of expertise and time and effort to make sure that we're actually pursuing the things we need in order to get to the
Well,
goal. So
is number 9 gonna establish a committee with staff?
usually, Sustainability Commission is made up of volunteers from the town, much like in many of our other boards. And you want to bring
That is
in.
that's a policy board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a policy board. When we say they work with staff, it means that they would work with staff, not that they would have their own staff position.
Yeah, but you're saying resource needs, you got the word staff.
But somebody on
though.
staff would need to work with them,
Work with
right?
staff.
Whether it's a full-time person or Pat or somebody else.
Or maybe they have a clerk. You know,
I mean,
some
you
boards
guys
don't
have staff working with
So-
you, so I don't know why you would imagine a sustainability commission not having some staff person assigned to work with them.
On number 8, can we just say the item or the action would be keep current with trends and technologies and consider becoming a member of the Clean Energy Center or DOER working group. And then under resources, it could be potential staff, shared resource, however it gets
Yeah, that makes sense.
fun, gets
That's up to you.
resource.
That's up to you.
Well, at that point in time, it's gonna be up to town meeting.
Right, but
Well,
I mean, at least
obviously.
the action is, we need to do this, right? We need to keep current on the technologies, and it's a good idea to become a member of these groups. How we get there, you can document in the resources.
I like the monitor and, consider, and consider,
Monitor and evaluate.
evaluate.
Wasn't that the wording?
That was the-
Okay, why don't we read it one more time for number 8, if you could, what we're considering.
I think we have very, very different opinions on that, so. I
Okay.
think what we need to do is put a couple of these up to vote and just see what the pleasure of the committee is.
So, didn't you just ask, you just want to read Carrie's language again, right? How it would read like that? That's all you're
Yes.
asking, yeah.
So what I had said was monitor and evaluate the need for a staff position responsible for staying current with trends and technologies, possibly becoming a member of the Green Energy Center or a DOER working group. It was just changing the beginning verb.
That's fine.
I liked how Mike's didn't specify.
Mike, the way you worded it.
Keep current with trends and technologies and consider becoming a member of the Clean Energy Center or DOER working group.
Yeah,
And then
I
the
vote for that.
resources needed would be listed under staff. Staff would be listed under resources. Shared resource, new staff add, whatever it might be.
It's fine too.
Right, and even staff capacity says, taking a look at what, to me, that reads, taking a look at what
What you have,
we
right?
currently have, and who
Yeah,
could take it on,
yeah.
or who could, yeah.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so I think the committee is speaking. I can see the heads nodding, so.
So can you just repeat that so I get it straight? Because I've been taking a lot of notes here and I just want to make sure I get the language the way you want it. Can you repeat that
So
again?
we're eliminating like the first 7 words and saying, keep
Right.
current with trends and technologies and consider becoming a member of a Clean Energy Center or DOER working group. And then under resources needed, it will stay at staff capacity.
Okay.
Why don't you add a
Good
little
job.
language share?
Or, well, I think staff capacity says that, but, because
Leaves it open.
it leaves it open. We can add, or we can look at an existing.
That's fine.
Okay,
I
so
got it.
people
Thank
good
you.
with that?
Yes.
Can I just ask this one more time, because I know Patrick was out, but we have community and economic development in every single thing here for all the green initiatives. Is that just
Like
because
an
of
umbrella,
grants?
Everything's underneath me.
See, I told you. we
Is it just
volunteer
because of
for
the
everything.
grants, is that, or like, what?
It really kind of falls all under community and economic development, planning, land use planning, sustainability.
Okay, so you're
It's
fine with-
all
you're fine
falls
with
under
that.
What
Okay,
I do.
all right, so we really did assign everything to you.
So I think we're good on that. Number 9, establish sustainability commission to work with staff, prepare plans, track implementation progress, educate the public, and collaborate with other groups on climate goals. And many towns have sustainability commissions, by the way, and often what they do is they get a lot of volunteers of professionals who work in the field, who then can, in other words, you want people actually who have a breadth of knowledge, particularly the whole area of going to renewable energy and, whether it be geothermal or whatever, it's changing rapidly, and you really want to have experts who really work in it, and that's an opportunity to take advantage of the people in the community who do those things.
That's good.
Any other comments, or?
So it did say though, like our 5.3 did use the idea of recruiting qualified volunteers. I don't know if you wanted to add that back in or not, but
Want to add that, recruit?
I'm just saying that,
Yeah.
the idea that, right, because like this is a board where it should be like, it should be people who have, an expertise in this area
Yeah.
or something.
So if we say establish a sustainability commission and recruit qualified volunteers to work with staff, et
Yes.
cetera?
I think that's good.
It's fine.
Number 10, encourage property owners to invest in green improvements using local, state, and federal resources. And again, it sounds like this would be what some of these boards would be doing, and, the public education.
So if I'm reading this correctly, this is making property owners aware of resources that are available to them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Maybe we say that.
Like increase,
Promote awareness, or,
increase, yeah.
increase awareness.
Okay, no, that's good. Everybody good with that?
So how do you want to say this? Increase property owners' awareness of investing in green improvements? Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure I get the wording right.
Opportunities to-
Opportunity, yeah,
Of available resources?
But what's the verb? If we're not encouraging, what are we doing?
increasing awareness.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe increasing property owners' awareness of opportunities to invest in green improvements,
Yes.
Thank you.
right? Because you could give them a flyer that's like, hey, like, kind of like mass save, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
put in better windows, like, and you'll get most of it paid by the state, but they just want, again, you can't force them
Yep.
to do it, but it's just like, did you know?
That's right, and some of the changes in Mass Save and some of the changes in the federal credits have gotten more complicated with the, for example, and some of them are actually convoluted, so it's hard to navigate some of that. And then I had submitted a couple, and I guess I don't know the process, Judy, did you see the ones I had submitted?
Yeah, but we had already posted this in the shared folder by the time I got those.
Yeah.
So I am aware that you have suggested some, they're just not in this draft.
Is that something I can bring up here now?
If you want to, it's absolutely your meeting, you can.
Though, that we had comments, and she said they'll be reviewed on Friday at their meeting.
Yeah,
So I think we should try and move on, because it's already 9
Okay.
o'clock.
yeah,
I know, I'm worried about the same thing, Katie.
Okay, yeah. And just, I just felt there's a couple things to be more actionable, things that could be happening in the more short-term medium. I felt there was, real things, and for example, electric vehicles, so, but I'll wait till.
So
Judy-
can I make a suggestion? If you folks, and you may have already done this, so please forgive. If anybody has specific recommendations, can you just make sure they all get to Pat so that the whole committee sees them? So that we're not just getting them individually. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
So, but Judy, when they send them to me, I send to you, or do you want me to resend to the entire board?
Just make sure that everybody's got them, that's all. If everybody's already got them, that's fine, but,
No, they haven't.
No, because I've been just sending them to you.
yeah, I see, that's putting us in a weird position, because then if we add something that one person said, then I'm gonna have someone saying at the next meeting, where did this come from? So it really would be better if everybody sees them, and so you are not caught by surprise if we have a team meeting and say, gee, this suggestion from Katie or someone makes sense, let's add it, that you know it actually was, we were responding to a comment that we got.
Well, it shouldn't be added until the board discusses it.
Well, so you don't want us to talk about them at the team meeting on Friday?
No, we do.
Yeah.
This has been, because it's gonna drag on if you don't.
yeah.
I
but we should-
know, that's,
I don't think that
I'm
we don't.
assuming,
I don't think that, it'd be very difficult for us to take all of these comments that we've talked about in the last 3 meetings and then get them in an email and then keep track of them and know who, they should be centralized through you and just kind of listed, like comment from Patrick, or whatever it is, just so we know that.
What
okay,
if-
so I have those comments.
Yeah.
I'm saying that if an individual committee member has a recommendation that you want to be considered,
Oh, that one. Yeah.
something gets added, just to
So-
make sure everybody gets
So
those.
it gets, this document gets modified and we review it
But
and
for-
discuss it.
I think what she's saying, and so for example, my comment about public safety was discussed at the meeting, and Pat put it in the notes. So that that was aired publicly to everyone, whereas
Yes.
Phil's comments, he submitted, we have not aired. So
Right.
I think what she's trying to say is the sidebar comments, and I use the word sidebar, I don't mean that in any way disrespectfully. Those comments that were submitted to Pat, and more than just Phil did that, because we talked about
Yeah.
doing
Yeah,
it.
we said that was
That's-
the process.
that's right.
We said everybody
So-
should submit any additions to Pat.
So maybe just those sidebar comments get shared, so that if that's possible.
Or additional,
so-
additional,
Pat, if that's
additional
not too much.
recommendations,
No,
additional
so it must be miscommunication, man. So I received comments from Phil today, Carrie, I believe yesterday, and I think before we got all the recommendation tables, I only got comments again from Phil and then from Andrew.
Yeah, I sent a
So
couple.
that
So-
might be, if you just share those so that
Yeah.
we see them, so it's not a shock. But the problem we're gonna run into, I see, is we can't discuss them because of open meeting laws and all of that. So
Right.
I don't know what kind of a bind and if that even helps you, because you're going to have those comments and you don't know how the committee feels about them. So that is still a predicament for the consulting firm, but I do understand what you're saying as it should be aired, so,
I was thinking
Right.
that Judy would look over the recommendations that we were sending her, so we don't violate the open meeting law.
right.
They would make an assessment on where they fit or not. And then they would then, well,
Or if they even overlap. with
Sure.
overlap. And then they would present them back to us, and that would be the time all of us would see them.
But I think
in
what
a written-
Judy's saying, and I understand, is it should be our decision. It shouldn't be one committee member's,
Oh, but that committee member's just putting it out there for discussion.
but we're not discussing it. So that's what, she
Right.
doesn't want to modify things. She doesn't want to put the time into modifying. What you said might be fantastic, so
no,
don't
I-
take it personally,
No,
what
no,
I'm
I don't,
saying.
I don't.
But she puts the time into modifying it, and then if they put all that time in and then it comes back and 6 of us say, what the heck's this? That's not going to help her.
But is it any different?
Thank you,
than-
Katie. Thank you, Katie. You've got it. That's
Yeah,
the
but
point.
Is it any different though when we could reject any of the ones that they've given us already, so.
But we don't want to put them,
But we've
We
done
do
that
not
public,
wanna
we've
put
done that
them
in the
in
group
here.
already.
I
Can
think,
I make
yeah.
a
Unless-
suggestion? So I received comments from Phil, Kerry, and then Andrew before this, so that's the only.
But I wanna clarify that the things I sent you were the
comments to an
things
existing, yeah.
at our last meeting when we said, why don't you take a stab at reworking this? Cause we hadn't had a discussion about it. That's what I sent you. I didn't send you anything that
Yep.
I just came up with on my own. It was after
So
our
yours were
discussion.
discussed.
Correct.
And I started with the rec stuff that I still have to add too, because now
Oh, yeah, so, which we already discussed as well.
we already discussed it, but
So it would just be Phil and Andrews, right?
Which, Judy, correct me if I'm wrong, so we receive revised versions of the recommendation tables.
said I'm okay with
The few recommendations that we've received
that's what I
from
got.
Phil, and I think a few from Andrew, we just vote on those at that time and bring them forward. I mean, I'm just trying to find a way to kind of.
can you
bring
just put
that-
them, just put them in one document? We can
Yeah.
vote them in the next meeting? Just
I'm gonna,
talk-
what I
I'm
was
gonna put them in one Word file, separate from
Yeah.
these charts.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're.
Because
I
if
think
you
that-
want to add them, then we will.
Right, I think, because the next, she's gonna give us the charts back and we're gonna discuss them again, so she should give us the revised charts based on our discussions in these meetings, and we can have, it's like a separate thing, and we can decide whether or not we wanna add it or not, because she's gonna get edits to come back.
Or add them in red in the section that you think they go in, and we'll talk about it.
No.
Yeah,
No, I'm gonna put them in a separate Word document so you guys can discuss them.
okay.
Yeah. And we're just trying to work around the open meeting law. We don't want to violate it. That's a.
Right.
No, I think it's great to have the suggestions. It's just that I want the committee to discuss them before we do anything with them.
Right, yeah. That's kind of the difficult step to do. So,
Housing.
so let's take a vote on all of the action items under goal 5. Someone make a motion to accept as amended.
I'll make a motion to accept as amended all of the items under goal 5 for climate change and resiliency.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All, no? John, you're a no?
No, yeah,
Yeah, abstain?
on religious grounds.
Yeah, no, that's, so it's, should be 701, right?
710, right?
710. I think I said
Sorry,
no.
yeah, 710, yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, so now we're up to housing, right? So goal 6, housing. One second here. Okay, so, housing, increase the range of housing types and the affordable housing supply to meet the needs of people throughout the various stages of the life cycle. Policy 6A, provide public information and education resources about housing in Walpole. And the first one, and I just arbitrarily numbered these 1 through N. 1 is develop a comprehensive municipal engagement program to build knowledgeable, effective advocacy for affordable housing.
Can you just elaborate under the resources needed? We obviously know the Walpole Housing Authority. What is Three Rivers Interlocal Council and Neighborhood Works Housing? Neighborworks
Sure.
Housing.
So as part of your involvement or membership in the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, because that regional planning district is so big, MEPC split it up into subregions, and yours happens to be called Trick or Three Rivers. So it's Walpole, Pat, you can help me with this, Walpole, Sharon, Medfield,
Foxborough,
Medway.
Medfield, Randolph, Canton, Westwood, a good bunch. I'm actually the
According,
president.
I was just gonna say, according to their website, you're the chair. And there's a nice picture of Bird Park on their website.
And what about Neighborworks housing?
So Neighborworks, the Commonwealth has a nonprofit housing education center for every region of the Commonwealth. Out in Berkshire County, it's in Pittsfield. Where I live on the South Shore, it's in Kingston. There's it's a regional housing information center. And so Neighborworks is the folks that would be serving Walpole. Actually, I think it's the same Neighborworks that serves my town. So they're a resource center. They have information. They're like people you would go to if you were looking for information about home ownership assistance or rental assistance or what's happening with affordable housing development in your region. It's an information source.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
No problem. I think we should put a glossary at the end of this plan so that people can find this stuff easily.
Can I ask why these action items are bulleted and not numbered? Is there a reason for that?
Because I was trying to get away from the numbering, to be honest with you. I just thought the numbering was was inadvertently suggesting an order of priority, and it really wasn't the intent. We can number them if you want, but
Well, every other section is done that way,
Numbering
correct?
makes it easier though.
I
for
understand
referencing.
that.
We can,
they were done earlier, that's why. If you want them numbered, we can number them.
I think it would be better for, when we go.
That's okay.
So is everyone good with this, the first one?
Yes.
Number 2, collaborate with neighboring towns to establish a regional housing services office. And Judy, you want to tell us?
So I think there's already some discussion going on about this. Am I right, Pat?
Yeah, so back in fall of 2020, Norwood and Canton were working with MAPC on getting a technical assistance grant to look into establishing with an SHSO, a shared housing services organization or office. What that effectively, there's a few other of these in the state, so it's not a total new thing, but it is a kind of a small concept. And what it is towns sometimes don't have staff capacity to deal with all their housing needs, especially when it comes to 40B monitoring, checking monitoring agreements, looking at making resources available to the public, a few other different options. So what they'll establish is called an SHSO, and so towns will fund certain components that they need help with from a staff capacity side, and a third-party entity which works for those towns that are in the SHSO will provide services to those towns as a way to kind of alleviate staff capacity needs. So like what you need is what you pay for. So if we're like Walpole was only concerned about monitoring its existing 40Bs, that's the only program that we would fund from the SHSO.
Right.
So,
That's right.
yeah.
So,
So it's very flexible in that regard.
It's very flexible. It's not like, hey, it's $50,000 every year. No, it's based upon exactly the needs that you need from a housing standpoint.
Right.
my question is why these specific towns are listed? And I only ask that because it's like skips over towns. And like, for example, it says Rentham but not Norfolk. It says Sharon but not Foxborough. It says Bellingham but not Franklin. Medfield and Millis aren't in there.
So that's the, I think that's, last I have heard, which we haven't talked at a trick meeting in a while, but that was the group that kind of composed the initial, the SHSO being created around here. So Norwood and Canton led the effort. I believe Hopkinton actually became the lead community.
Right.
So those are communities that basically signed on the first year to like, hey, we want this service, we're gonna start. But it can expand, so.
So can we not list those specific towns if it can expand?
Sure.
Sure, yeah.
Sure. You can take them out. It's fine.
just in
I was
case
trying
it
to be
changes.
specific, just to recognize that something was underway.
Yeah.
But you don't have to, we don't have to list those.
Well, what kind of other services are going to be provided by a housing consortium?
So one of the services that the Regional Housing Services Office up in the Concord-Acton area does is they help their towns keep their housing production plans up to date. So instead of having to hire a consultant, you're paying into a membership with an RHSO, Regional Housing Services Office, and so they can help you keep your plans up to date in a more cost-effective way. That's just another service. I know I was working for the town of Sudbury a few years ago when they were trying to resolve a very nasty 40B dispute. And the RHSO was involved with just helping the town understand and educate the public about what the town had for subsidized housing inventory, what was coming online, what units were at risk, just educational, because they had the data, because that's what they do. So they were really very helpful, I think, to that community.
So this could be labeled the 40B Housing Collaborative Services Office. That's basically
It's not
what
all
it is.
40B though, so it's subsidized.
Well, they do more than 40B. I mean,
Oh, go ahead, Judy.
Because we have
they
a
do
lot.
more than 40B.
What does that mean?
I was giving you an example of something they did in another town that happened to involve trying to resolve a Chapter 40B dispute. They sometimes help communities with things like selling municipal land for housing development. A lot of towns do that kind of thing. And so they're like a technical assistance service on housing.
And you mentioned the
Specifically
inventory,
for
housing,
subsidized housing.
subsidized housing
Yeah.
inventory is a big one.
So affordable.
Yeah.
It's huge. So, but the names of the towns can come out, folks. I was simply doing that to try to register that something's already underway, and that, you ought to continue with it, but it doesn't matter to me whether those towns are listed.
Well, I suppose if Patrick's the chairman of it, we probably would want to keep, in a very small way, we'll list that we'll continue a relationship with Regional Housing Office. I don't think we have to get into the other towns.
Well, Katie made a good point too. I mean, that's the group that's existing kind of currently. It can certainly change. So I think just collaborating.
Right.
with different towns.
So you want me to take it out?
As a no, I'll give you an okay, Patrick, on that one.
So
Thank you, John.
and we're very pleased to have Patrick have a leadership position representing Walpole in a way, so.
Yeah.
He'd lose his presidency if we didn't put it in here.
Yeah, Judy, that was Paige from Foxborough, basically, when I started in Norwich. She's like, oh, we need someone else. Pat, you're gonna be the co-chair, whatever it was, the third in charge. And somehow I became chairperson.
Okay, so I'm gonna remove the names of the towns. That's what you're asking me to do?
Yep.
Okay,
And it might be good to put down that we pay for the we can pick the services we want, we pay, right? That-
Yep.
Correct, yeah.
So it's good to note that maybe
It's
too.
not a one
So-
price.
Yeah. And then, so we're good on that? Number 3, sponsor a biannual panel of experts, presentations about local and regional housing issues that affect Walpole, maintain recordings on Walpole media.
Who makes the decision of who's the expert and who gets included on the panel?
So it
well,
says- it
I mean,
says
typically a housing
commission.
partnership would sponsor things like this. This is sort of where it's done elsewhere. Having sat through a few of your Chapter 40B hearings as a consultant for the town, I think there is a need for information in Walpole, as there is in every community. It's not just your town. So having something that's systematic, as opposed to a one-off that happens, whenever, to have a systematic program for housing education is a good thing to do. At least you're giving people information instead of them being in a void or just having a lot of misinformation.
We hear a lot of 40B here, this is, if we called it something else, like affordable multi-housing or something, there's kind of a negative, everything, we might as well call it bad housing.
Yeah, but I think it's
Instead
okay.
of say 40B, just say bad housing.
Well, the chart doesn't say
John, I think
40B.
it's
I
okay,
just,
because it doesn't say 40B in the wording. So.
that's right, it
They
doesn't.
keep using it in the discussion, I understand.
So
We have a lot of housing experts that would say that. I don't know if we need to have a special symposium.
Well, I think this
We
is
have
for
many
educating the
community
public.
groups, housing overseers,
I'm fine with it.
I think
housing experts.
if Andrew were here, I would ask him, since he's on Housing Partnership, and he did tell us beforehand that he's not opposed to anything
I
here,
am,
so.
I am on the
Yeah.
Oh,
housing
and-
partnership
right,
too,
so
but
there you go,
Andrew's the chair.
And he said he was fine with this.
right.
Andrew said he was fine with, yeah, well, for all the housing ones,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I would say that just based on, the challenge of, having people come to meetings and try to educate people on housing, it could be very often a very complicated subject, and, you just have to keep working on it. People are busy, so the more ways you can communicate and educate people, I think the better it is for Walpole.
Just make sure that the panel includes, like, we reach out to like the developers in town as well, because like we keep hearing this at all of our public hearings on different things, right? Is that I'm just hearing about this now, so like we really have to make a concerted effort that we're making sure all voices are heard in these
Yeah,
Just say a balanced panel of experts.
but I just.
It doesn't have to be in the wording, I just wanna say, like, I
do want to say, though, on the housing partnership, we worked really hard to get those hearings
I'm not
publicized.
saying that, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, it's almost a way, it's the lawyer in me thinking, you have to think of a way that you can counter any argument that's gonna, right? It's not a biased panel, it's, we include these, we offered it to all these people, you can't just have the same person be, I'm the expert for
Right.
subject matter X,
Right.
I'm the expert for developers, I'm the expert for, like, you have to rotate it through, so you're not getting, just trying to think of ways to.
Should we take it out? Like, can
You're-
we just
you're
say
right.
that- Can we just say that, to partner with somebody to sponsor regular presentations about local and,
I think it kind of says that, right? Partnerships with Neighborworks, Greater Boston Real Estate Board, builders, remodelers. I mean,
Yeah, that's the resource needed.
it covers, I think, a lot of.
I think, I don't know, I think panel of experts in quotes is what's causing
Right.
some stress here, so.
Do you want the word balanced added to it? Because I think that that's a valid point.
Is it needed? I mean, is the
Well,
action just to
if
like?
it's,
I mean, I think hopefully people.
Oh,
are-
would you say
Would we be
biannual
scheduling presentations with people that weren't experts in their field?
I don't,
All the time.
I'm sure that they wouldn't, but I'm just responding to what I'm hearing in the room.
I think we could take out panel of experts and just say.
They have to have a
sponsor
builder's
biannual
license and build at least
presentation.
10 homes
Sponsor regular presentations about local and regional.
before they can talk about housing.
That's fine. If you want to take
I think
panel of
that works.
Could
experts
even
out,
say
that's
balanced
fine.
panel.
I mean, we hope, I mean,
Or a balanced panel presentation.
But I just think, yeah, like.
Yeah,
like just-
I would take it out, strike it, just sponsor a
Biannual
regular
presentation.
presentation.
so are we good with that language then, for three?
Yep.
Number 4, encourage a variety of housing in the downtown area, ideally in conjunction with planning to work towards compliance with the MBTA communities legislation. And it says see policy 6B, goal 3.
So this is policy 6B, goal 1, and there's goal 2, but there's no goal 3.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
I think it should be
6C.
6C. Didn't,
Yeah, it is at 6C. Yeah,
Okay.
you're correct.
so can you clarify, and I'm sorry, I know it's late.
No, it's all right.
Pat, didn't you say that the MBTA rules we might be okay with, and that you had to see because they had revised them? The last time we talked about this, didn't you say,
So, I think last time we kind of talked about this one in particular, I know there was the concern about downtown, and I think we would change it to public transit-oriented housing. But in terms of the MBTA communities, I could say we're not fine, just based upon
Okay.
the final guidelines.
Right.
didn't we
Right.
take out downtown?
Yeah, so that's one of the things, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
it says the optimum location for housing and the location that stands to benefit most in terms of economic development and public infrastructure investment is downtown, but we wanted to expand that to reflect
Public transit.
public transit routes,
locations.
right?
So and why don't we want to say downtown?
Because all the people that came out from the public said no.
Yeah,
Did they-
that was, yeah. that
Did
was
people
my
say
group
no,
was-
or they just say they didn't want large buildings downtown? I mean,
No, I think,
it's
I think the point was that we wanted this to reflect the need of housing as long as it's along some public transit. It doesn't have to be downtown, close to the train. It could be on a bus route, it could be anyplace else.
so if it's near the MBTA station downtown, that's fine.
That's one option, but
That's
it
fine.
it could also
Okay,
be on
so we
27.
don't wanna
on-
be not excluding, I just wanna make sure we're saying, don't do downtown.
No, we're not saying
So do you
don't,
want
we're
to say,
just not
encourage a
saying-
variety of housing with access to public
Don't only do-
transportation?
I mean, you have the notes from, so that would,
I do, yeah. I
from
was
six
just trying
point
to-
two, yeah. I think we just wanted to be, not be exclusive downtown.
Judy, what did you say?
I was asking if you wanted that to be changed to something like encourage a variety of housing with access to public transportation.
Yes.
Or in areas along MBTA routes.
Yeah. That's sort of what the
But
wording we
public
use.
transportation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would make the comment that in this section, particularly in B, I like all the stuff in D. And C is strategically spot on. But in B, I think when you talk about encouraging housing, there's a mandatory part that is, you don't have control over. But there are limitations to housing. I mean, I don't know how much housing people are wanting to develop in Walpole, but we're not going to be allowed to develop hardly any more unless we vastly expand the water supply. We don't have any water for any more housing. So, and that's not just water, but it's land as well. So I think that there's an over thing about all the housing. I think you're going to see that there isn't going to be much more housing. Housing is going to be in this section D where you have people putting two families and single family, and you have in-laws, and you have accommodation for seniors. That's really where the growth in housing is going to be. These other things, 40Bs, these other things aren't really, I don't think they're possible or going to happen. So you put a lot of emphasis on them, but I don't think they're in the cards geographically or resource-wise.
Well, the problem is that even if nothing gets built in your MBTA Communities District, the law still directs towns to establish the district. So if nothing's built there, nothing's built there. The law doesn't say you have to build the housing, it says you have to have the zoning.
Good.
Yeah. Not a building requirement, so.
So are we
Right.
good with, are we good with 4 then, with that change on along the public transportation?
Yep.
And then number 5, identify sites on which to encourage friendly 40B local initiative program partnerships with the housing authority or other trusted developer partners. And this is an opportunity to, rather than have 40B projects that come in that we have no control, it's an opportunity to
Right.
work with developers who are willing to work with the town and also to right-size the project based on where it's going to be built in Walpole, as opposed to having these maybe out-of-scale projects. So it's in our interest to do that.
Well, you say out of scale, Phil, it's within the scale of the state housing. It's just not within the perceived scale of certain people in Walpole.
Or sometimes by the area it is perceived or otherwise, yeah.
Well,
I mean, maybe in scale, I guess I don't want to make a judgment on that, but, yeah.
Can you explain to me what a trusted developer is?
Have you ever met one?
Maybe you know one?
you're picking winners and losers?
No one? Why is that word in there?
Because the town doesn't have to partner with someone they don't trust. The point is to, you would use this tool if you had a developer that you were comfortable working with.
Yeah, and of course, if they weren't over-regulating them, they wouldn't have to partner with a developer. People could just use their property rights the way they're supposed to be able to.
So would that exclude new developers?
No.
Because you haven't worked with them
Why?
before in the past and they're not trusted?
No, why would you do that?
I don't
If
know,
you're
'cause
able
you're
to
using
speak
the
with
word
other
trusted.
communities that have
There's a
had
lot of ways you might
experience with a
trust somebody
developer,
Just by,
Okay.
Yeah, the 40Bs are like a straitjacket. You don't have to worry about what they're gonna do. They have to do the exact same thing. The state's all over them. to do exactly what they're prescribed to do.
Are we good with this one?
Yeah.
So we're up to 6C, improve local regulations to better incentivize affordable housing production that meets local needs. And the first one, number 6, which also was corresponding to 6.1, I know we discussed it. Develop an inclusionary zoning bylaw to require large new residential development includes that, that's right. Develop an inclusionary zoning bylaw.
They're
to
missing
require
words,
large
to
new
include.
Residential development, to include.
To include,
affordable units.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd erase the word inclusionary in that.
So Judy, do you want to speak on this?
So I think any town that is subject to the MBTA communities legislation that doesn't have inclusionary zoning in place is asking for trouble. And I think that if you're going to have to do that zoning, because it isn't a law, you ought to make sure that you're going to get an affordable housing benefit out of it. Because otherwise, all you're doing is you're just increasing the denominator under 40B, but not adding any units on the numerator. It doesn't make any sense. I also think that you have housing needs in your community. So why wouldn't you want to create affordable housing in a way that is easier for the town to manage?
I think at the meeting, and someone else can summarize better than I, but I think what we discussed was it's not that we don't want affordable housing and it can be in the zoning, we just didn't want it called an inclusionary zoning bylaw.
Oh, well, what do you want to call it?
Zoning.
Develop a zoning bylaw to require large new residential development, including affordable units, just take the word out, that's
Okay.
all.
Why don't we
That's
want to use
fine.
inclusionary? I'm just trying.
Phil, we talked about it like in
I know, I'm
depth.
just trying to understand it. That's
Took the wording out.
I'm not going back to the notes, and, I mean, we talked and talked about it.
Yeah, we did, we voted on
half
it.
Just
hour.
like to have it be like, to take away.
It's fine. You don't need it in there. I mean, it's
We
a
don't
term
need
of
it,
art,
right.
We got a
Katie.
whole statement of it, like, it
Yeah.
wasn't,
Yeah.
it was like all about, we didn't even just say like larger, we didn't get into, I don't think that like larger complexes have to have X
It
number
was
of.
good. We talked about it for like a half hour. and-
Yeah,
Right,
no,
we
I'm
talked
sorry,
about-
but I just was trying to
We talked about that it was the idea that it would be like the whole, like we would look at like a lot more things that were unnecessarily restrictive and prohibiting development.
You
I don't
did.
have, I don't have, again, I'm sorry, I'm not going back and watching meetings.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
already
that's
had-
okay.
And we already had this discussion, like at another meeting, and we talked about, we came up with an agreement that we had language, and so it may very well be that it, like, part of that is like, we're gonna go through it, and it might come back with something that has this idea of like, when you have a, it's the concept of inclusionary zone, but we didn't like that it was like, have an inclusionary zone, we were like, let's go bigger, let's go big or go home, like, that was our whole.
So,
bet
can I
it's in
address
Pat's
this?
notes. I bet it's
We
in the
heard
notes.
that. I actually was,
we
I-
voted on it.
I
I'm
heard
sorry,
that
I didn't mean to,
discussion.
I just trying, I guess pardon me for bringing it up again. I'm just trying to understand it. I don't think I understood it then, and I probably don't understand it now.
In
That's
court,
why.
Phil, we would say asked and answered. This is like, we've already discussed it, like, we had this discussion and we
Yes.
came up with a solution that we could all agree on, so I feel like we should abide by that.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it was only 7
So-
people there at the meeting. There's 8
Well,
people.
and there's 8 tonight, so it's not, I mean.
We tried
Come
to
on.
take that discussion, which I heard, and build on it in the recommendations that follow in this table. There's some other ideas in here about liberating the zoning a bit to allow more types of housing in town, as opposed to just ripping a bandage off and then saying, and not giving any direction at all. Because I think we've heard people say, we really like the character of this town as a place with predominantly single family or smaller scale housing. So
Are you arguing for that
in
language?
response to that discussion that you had, we added some ideas in here which are under policy 6D. The reason we did not change the affordable housing wording, which I'm fine of doing, is that we wanted to just underscore the point that any town that is subject to that MBTA communities legislation that doesn't have a bylaw that requires affordable housing at some level is at risk. And we'd be irresponsible of us not to tell you that.
And just to expand on that a little bit, so if it's in regards to the MBTA zoning, there is a housing density threshold. It's 15 dwelling units per acre minimum, and it's also dependent upon what your existing housing stock is, and then what's the state classifies you as in terms of your transportation category. So with the new version of the MBTA zoning, we're designated as a commuter rail community. So we need to have at least 15, we need to have a location or multiple locations, depending on however we design it, the MBTA zoning, that accounts for a minimum build-out of 15% of our existing 2020 housing stock. So we're around 10,042 units. I think it's like 1,506 units.
Something like
would
that.
be our minimum housing that we need to zone for the ability to get up to that threshold.
In that MBTA zone.
In that BMBTA zoning. So
And
that's
the number set by the state.
to Judy's point, that's where it's kind of, we don't need to call it inclusionary zoning, but if we need to have an area zone to meet, a minimum build-out of 1,500 units, it'd be,
Put that in there. You need to tie that language to the MBTA commuter, like, you have to do something, like, cause it's not, when I read it, I understand inclusionary zone, like, and I understand, but I feel like we need to make it clear why we are pressing this, even if the town are saying, we have to say to them, it's beneficial to do this because X, Y, and Z. But I also feel like at our last meeting, like, we finally got the entire room to agree on taking
Even
bold
Andrew.
action.
The goal should
No, I mean,
state
we were
reform
all-
excessively restrictive zoning rules to allow for more accessible, affordable housing in Walpole and create a formative plan to get Walpole to the subsidized housing threshold.
We all agreed on that, we hashed it out, even Andrew was involved in that.
Right.
Like, it was,
So we actually agreed on bold action.
And all we
later
tried
on.
to, we did, we heard you. All we tried to do
why are we
under
talking about it
16
again?
was talk about ways
Put it in there.
to do that.
yeah, just don't word it that way, that's all.
I took it out.
Actually word it this way, reform excessively restrictive zoning rules to allow.
that is in 6D.
Why do
Okay.
you think you have excessively restrictive zoning?
We got it already.
What was that, Judy?
Because we do.
I mean, you have areas in your town where it makes sense to allow more types of housing because it's already there, which is kind of what 6D talks about in this chart. There's things you could do that would be really innocuous, would more housing opportunities in the town. But as for your overall zoning, I guess I'm just wondering why everybody thinks it's overly restrictive.
We already had this discussion. I'm sorry, it's 9:30. I don't want to go through it again.
There's
Like, I'm sorry.
a recorded meeting that you all can reference if you have questions, but we talked about it for an hour.
And we got people to agree
I was
on that
I was part of that
language.
meeting.
And
I
I'd
heard
like
it.
to just, like, you can say it was 60, but it doesn't say, it doesn't have tying through, like, to the affordable housing and, I thought we came up with language that sort of really,
I mean, those are the notes that I have, but I didn't take notes on everything.
No, it's in.
All of
chapter,
6D
uh,
is about liberating your zoning to allow more types of housing.
but like the policy, yes, it's not as expansive and effusive as what we came up with. And then there's specific recommendations, that's great, but it's not, I don't feel like what's in 60 encompasses everything by what we were trying to encompass by the words that we just read, that Mike just read.
Next.
So should we go on to number 7?
Yes.
This corresponds with 6.3 in the original draft recommendations. Evaluate the effectiveness of the zoning for older adult housing developments.
If I may, I think the word effectiveness should be more, it should be explained a little bit more. What you're trying to look at, what you're trying to evaluate, or what
Availability.
effect, is that what it, evaluate for availability, evaluate for occupancy or whatever. Effectiveness is too broad, I guess.
Right, for what
You know what the issue is there? We don't have any zoning for senior villages. It's whatever it is, 10 or 20 acres, which there's no such property. So no one's been able, Rentham has had like 6 senior villages put in. We haven't had any because there's no land. Our zoning is so restrictive, you can't build a senior village. Our seniors, like Joe Moraski, et cetera, all move into Rentham because there's no such product in Walpole. It's because the zoning is wrong. That's what's wrong.
So wouldn't this cover that in terms of evaluating our existing AQB bylaw to make changes that are more agreeable for smaller developments?
you just have to change the zoning requirement to make it palatable to the size of lots that are available.
Yeah.
And the people at the seniors at the high school, they like the small ones. You know, if you had
So-
a 6-unit senior thing, could be perfect. In fact, you know.
This is where your zoning is out of touch with the industry. That zoning, there used to be a law in Massachusetts that said you had to have at least 5 acres for elderly housing. And that's gone, but you still find zoning around that has kind of an excessive land area requirement that really isn't necessary anymore. But at one time, the law did say that.
Yeah, well, the general residence and the industrial, you were quoting it before, they put housing, you just don't put affordable housing in business zone, you can put a big senior village there, but it has to be huge to justify, if you have 10 or 20 acres, you have to have hundreds of units, instead of having reasonable size little projects. So it doesn't require a whole zoning rewrite, it requires changing that one, the acreage and the categories of zoning, where they could have a senior village. That's all. It's just a simple change, it's just a simple, singular zoning change.
Didn't you have language, Donnell, in another zoning recommendation that was like audit and update or audit
Yeah,
and?
so we did so that's looking at the
Evaluate
whole
and update.
bylaw, the whole zoning bylaw.
But those things take
That'd be-
forever. We've hired consultants, they've gone for 3 years and they never we never got to a report. I mean, it goes on.
Well,
We don't need a formal audit in this case. We need,
No.
what's
it's
the right,
just
what's the right verb or the right?
you can make
Simple,
spot
singular
changes.
recommendation,
Yeah.
but maybe the support of the planning board, that's it.
The reason why zoning bylaws are hard to get through, because until just recently with the new state law,
Yeah,
it
in
required a
terms of an
2/3
audit, not to
vote.
go on a whole different
So-
spiel, I mean,
Yeah,
there is you couldn't even imagine the amount of like minute changes and corrections that need to go in place when it comes to an audit of the zoning, because there's a lot in there that's dead language, there's a lot that's been
Right.
ripped out, taken out, you go in circles because some of it just is not properly written, so.
and it's hard to read, hard
That-
to understand.
To
for
make those
people.
changes, you
Yep.
have to start somewhere, so
Yeah.
I think that's kind of where.
So the audit
law
was
is.
Just evaluate and revise the zoning.
But coming back to this one, evaluate the effectiveness of zoning. So to answer
What
Mike's
does-
question, what were you thinking of for effectiveness, Judy?
Does it work?
Does it work? Does it work for what the zoning is doing? Encouraging?
You know, if you have zoning for something and nothing's happening,
Yeah.
you ought to take a look at the zoning for that particular use or activity and figure out if there's something in the zoning that's contributing.
Yeah, no, that's helpful.
To John's point, it could be a minor change, or maybe there's something we could add to the existing AQB that isn't really covered in it.
Can we add a
Yeah,
little
well, it's
bit more?
availability is the issue, and
Yeah.
it's tied to the
The land.
to the requirement, it's too restrictive.
So maybe you should evaluate the effectiveness and make
And
recommendations
and
for
or
changing the
revise.
bylaws. Yeah,
Be prescriptive, just say, evaluate the effectiveness and revise the zoning.
want to add that?
If necessary.
If necessary. So let me add that. Everybody's good with that? And number 8, which is the same as 6.2, adapt zoning, that complies with the state's MBTA communities guidelines. So that would be proactive, Joe, just anticipating that we would need to, we're gonna be required to enact zoning based on their guidelines. It requires towns to establish an MBTA district.
Is this different than what we called before transit-oriented housing?
They're related recommendations.
So this would require a district, the other one would add affordable housing to it.
Right.
Is everyone good with this?
Yep.
Yes.
Policy 6D, promote a diverse range of new housing choices to serve the evolving needs of Walpole's families. And number 9, consider allowing 2-family dwellings by right in the general residence district. And this is again to alleviate the housing shortage in Massachusetts. I mean, there's been many articles about the need for doing this, and particularly in towns like Walpole. Are we good with that?
Yes. Just to consider, why is it capped at 2 instead of 3? Isn't 3 families now in like zoning and construction a cutoff point?
Yeah, so 2 families and 3 so basically, the way we have it is, in the GR, 2 families and 3 families are both allowed via special permit, and then they have a land area requirement that exceeds the dimensional requirements on top of that. So it's kind of, it's almost like it tells you it's allowed by special permit, and then it has like a prerequisite, by the way, you also need 30,000 square feet for a 3-family, which exceeds, I think, that within the general residence district.
As allowed for a 2-family?
It allows for a 2-family and 3-family, but only by special permit, but it's kind of, I would say, in my opinion, a little bit excessive when you allow it by a special permit, but then you also have a requisite that it needs a certain land area.
Yep.
If you have the land area, why do I need to get a special permit?
Mhm.
But that's a whole different thing. And then multifamily is another one too, where
Right.
the GR is the only district that allows for multifamily, but then we have 4 different kind of, I call them prerequisites, but 4 different kind of like land area buffer, and then if you were to have multiple buildings on a lot, you have a lot of different requirements that go along with it. So
Right.
not only is it a special permit, but then it also has all these different requirements,
Okay.
so.
So you still do a 3-family dwelling, but that would require the special permit.
Right.
So we're good with that? Number 10, update and revise the town's regulations for home occupations. So we actually already covered this, and
Yes.
and we agreed to it.
This one just had a little different wording. It
Yeah, so I
says,
think this wording is more precise and more, because it talks about permit them as of a right,
so
subject to the conditions.
update and revise means they'll review them, correct? Like they'll come up with a new list of them.
Well, the state of the art with home occupation, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I just had to take my earbuds out. The sort of state of the art with home occupation regulations is not to list permitted regulations, it's to regulate them based on impact. So it doesn't matter if you're a dentist or something else, what matters is parking requirements, signage, noise, things like that. It's really more
Uh-oh,
getting
we
the
just
impact,
lost you
that's
now.
what determines whether something's allowed as a
We
reg.
lost your voice now, Judy.
Can't hear you.
You speak, Judy?
Can you hear us?
Can hear you.
You guys hear me?
It's very faint.
Good, yeah. But you were saying that this is based on best practices,
I
it's
think,
more
yep.
generically. Yeah, so I
She
think,
answered my question.
so I think we're good?
Yep.
So, so this is the language. I
Can you hear
think
me
we-
now?
Yes.
we can.
Yep.
This is the language we.
Okay, I'm,
For the
Yeah.
home occupation.
um,
Sorry.
what I was trying to explain is that the way home occupation regulations are written today when they're updated is not to list specific occupations that are allowed, but rather to regulate them based on impact. So it wouldn't matter what kind of business it was if you didn't have any employees coming to your site, if you had, only one very small sign, if you had, no noise or excessive traffic generation beyond what would be expected in a neighborhood, you're allowed as a right. If you exceed those thresholds, then you would need a special permit.
Yes, I think we're good, Judy, with this one. And the language we prefer is the language that's in this section, not the
Okay,
language that
thank
was
you.
in section 1. The number
Okay.
11, update and revise the town's accessory dwelling unit bylaw to permit them as of right, subject to plan review, design standards in single-family dwellings, and adequate provisions for wastewater disposal.
So I have a question on this one. So, and it goes back to what we said about the 2 families in the GR. How, if we allow this in every area as a right, how do we prevent people from changing the in-laws so that it's an illegal 2-family? Like not
So-
an in-law?
They would not be limited to family members. People would be able to rent a unit.
That's what an accessory dwelling unit is. It's different from an in-law unit.
And so I disagree with this then, because I
Okay.
feel that, for example, the GR, you know, I didn't blanket that, but like if you buy a house in rural and pay the extra, obviously the real estate cost is going to be much more if you're buying in rural than if you're buying in GR, and you don't expect to have a two-family next to you.
Well, you wouldn't, because you would regulate the size of the unit, Katie, in a way that it doesn't become a two-family. Also, because it's an accessory use, it can't be separated from the main dwelling in terms of ownership.
So, but what stops you from renting it out to anyone?
Well, you would be able to. It wouldn't be limited.
So how is that not a multifamily?
Well, it's an accessory dwelling. The difference is that, like, someone can build a two-family dwelling and essentially condo it. So instead of having someone, like in the old days, it was someone owned one unit and rented the other, but that's not the way they're done anymore. It just isn't. In this case, you don't have two independently owned units. The structure is owned by one person, the owner occupant, and there is a smaller unit in the structure or on the property that they can rent. A two-family, the two units can be exactly the same size. They can be whatever size will fit on the lot. An accessory dwelling, you typically limit it to both floor area and a percentage of the existing residence. But it can't be separated from the main house in terms of ownership.
Some have design standards too. I would just say our
Right.
existing in-law suite bylaw includes a requirement that it appears and looks the same as the single-family home, so it doesn't stand out.
Right.
As Gigi's point, like, if it's not like it's a
They-
condo, we have 2 units, it's single-family home, and then there's a unit within that primary structure.
And it limits the size, the floor, you know, the floor.
Yeah,
floor area.
you can.
I still don't agree with it. So, I speak as someone who lives in an area where, I live downtown. So I have all sorts of different housing types around me, and I'm fine with that. But I don't think it's fair to the people who live in other areas of town and bought thinking that it wasn't allowed. So it's just my personal opinion. I have no problem with, if you guys disagree with me, but I don't support that.
Can I ask, this is a very innocent question because I'm not
Yeah.
educated on these matters, but
I'm not
what would you see as being those people's objection to having this kind of unit in their neighborhood?
So when you buy, in my eyes, when you buy in a more affluent area of town, you expect all the homes to be the same. You don't expect to have, you know, you renting out to God knows who. You expect that the Smith family is living next door to you, or the, it's different than having one family home occupied by one family. It might be fantastic neighbors they rent to, but I just don't think that's what they bought when they bought. I think they bought in, you know, a more affluent area of town and expected to have all those same types of homes in that area, whereas I bought in my area of town and I was fine with what I bought, but I went, it's what you know going in. That's the way I feel, like it shouldn't be changed on you once you're in there. So if they bought in that area and they expected to have those type of homes, I think it should stay that way. I don't think you should be having, you know, rental units tucked in here and there. I have no problem with in-laws. I think that that's different to have, you know, your parents retiring and moving in with you, or even having, you know, your child move in with you in their own.
That's the worst.
Yeah.
But what happens when your parents are gone and you have the unit? Like,
That, I don't think that should be allowed to be rented out to just anyone. I just, that's my personal view.
Do you think most people are aware of those zoning issues when they buy? I'll just say, like, I don't know where I live if it's allowed or disallowed, and I wouldn't,
But you live in a,
you know,
you don't live in, so you live in a neighborhood area that's sort of, I consider you're near school and downtown, like you haven't moved, right?
No, I
Yeah.
need to, but I
So
haven't.
you're in more of the old-fashioned part of town, is that the best way
Right,
to
but
put it?
I guess my point is, I'm not aware of it, and that doesn't mean that these people aren't aware of it either, because they live, but I don't know that they are, because they live in a different part of town from me, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know if that expectation
You know,
is there or not.
I think the traditional family residence has changed with society tremendously. A lot of the big homes in North Walpole, daughters and sons who got married or can get separated or divorced, they come back home.
Right.
You have three, who's living in the house she's talking about? Frontier Drive, which is probably a more prestigious street. The people at the end there live on Adams Farm. And those homes have in-laws in them, sizable in-laws. The people don't object. And then some of the people in those big homes have many, many generations of their family from the old country living there. And they got 8 cars in the driveway. You can go and look at them. I
So
mean, it's
so you're
not.
saying people should not object to accessory housing?
Yeah, it's changed, and the needs have changed. As this economy, I don't think people, it's kind of laughable what we're looking at spending here, because I don't think people realize the shape this country's in about being able to spend this kind of money on anything. But people are gonna be living together with mortgage rates at 10%.
We lost it.
Your kids aren't gonna be going out and getting their own apartment, but they're gonna come home and live. So you're gonna have that, you're gonna, and I
I
think.
know a lot of elders like to have a large house, their house rich, and they actually, it's an opportunity for them to rent out a part of their house.
Well, I just wonder if,
Can make it-
for every case that Katie's describing of somebody expecting that that is not something that should be allowed in their neighborhood, there could be somebody in that neighborhood who might think, well, I have this property and I bought it outright, and why can't I do what I want with it, right? So I don't know, I think there could be varying opinions on that issue. I respect Katie's opinion on it, but I'm not sure
I
that
can't,
it's
it's just
universal.
my opinion, and I respect you not agreeing with me, like I have no problem with that. I think I'd be more agreeable to it if it said, you know, to say to do it, it says update it and revise it. I think that,
Trying to find a way around this by FaceTiming Judy, so.
I think the wording's not okay with me, and I'm not gonna keep us here till 11 o'clock
Yeah.
tonight. So we'll just vote it, and I'll just abstain on that one, or, you know what I mean? Because I think that it's 10 o'clock and
Is it 10 o'clock?
everybody's had it, you know?
Okay, Bill. Ball's in your court.
So should we do a vote then to see if people would accept the wording as it is? And then we can consider options, so would someone make a
For all of
motion?
these as it is, or this one?
Just number 10, the accessory housing, I'm sorry, number 11, the accessory housing.
Number 11, right?
Number 11, yeah. So, I'll make a motion to accept number 11 as written.
I'll second it.
So Mike seconded, all in favor,
Aye.
all opposed?
Opposed.
And John, what did you vote?
Aye.
Aye, so it's, that'd be 7-1-1 then, 7-1-0. It is getting late.
We're done, right?
We're done.
We just have to vote for the whole
Then do all the rest, yep. Yep, I'm just writing my,
Minutes.
How does our lake?
so then make a motion to vote for goal 6, to vote on action items 1 through 10.
I'll make a motion to that.
Thank you.
So if we do that, then I have to vote against it, and I was in favor
No,
of the rest of it, right?
11
10.
we
11 we'll
just
keep
voted
out.
on.
Okay,
Well,
perfect.
So this is just 1 through 10.
Thank you.
We took out 11, yeah. So
So
Janet,
I
thank you.
lost you guys for part of that. Are you saying that the ADU one comes out?
No.
No, it's just,
Just pass,
Contested.
7-1-0.
And Janet, thank you, and someone second it?
I'll second it.
Mike seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Wait, so it's like as written, like that's what we're,
As corrected.
As
amended.
As amended.
and that will be like, because I felt like there was pushback on like having our language put back in there, like what did we agree on?
As amended. Because as we went through each of them.
That's true. Where are they putting it? Like, where's it going?
Right, like, I don't,
But we can vote again on, when
You
we
mean
get
where-
the.
I'm sorry, say,
I'm not clear on what
The
we
inclusion,
agreed to be amended.
the zoning stuff, the rewording on the zoning, we kind of went back and forth, but we don't know where it landed or where it's gonna be updated.
on the so-called inclusionary zoning one?
Yeah.
So I believe you said, develop a
That's it.
zoning bylaw to require large new residential development to include affordable units.
Removing exclusionary zoning.
Yeah, so.
And to remove inclusionary.
Yeah, we said, we said it was along transit, the MBTA transit.
That was a different one. That was encourage a variety of housing in areas with access to public transportation.
Eliminate inclusionary.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
eliminated the word.
I did
So
that.
the wording that we talked about last time, is that just gonna update in the recommendations, or?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the reference to so-called restrictive zoning to the wording of policy 6D, which currently reads, promote a diverse range of new housing choices to serve the evolving needs of Walpole families.
Jesus.
That's where the reduce the restrictiveness of Walpole zoning text should go,
To
because
allow
every
for
single action under that was,
Okay.
was intended to address what the committee had said.
That's okay, so Patrick gave you that language, so we're good.
I've written it down here as we're speaking, yes.
Thank you.
But you're not using the word diversity.
Right.
But what'll happen is when we get back from Judy, the wording, and after her team has looked at this, we will see, we will make sure that the wording is as we voted it.
So,
Are we all right with that, though? I want to make sure everyone's comfortable with that.
I'm all right with that.
Yes, fine,
Are you all right, Jen?
I'm fine. It's 10:04, I'm fine.
Okay. It's very fine.
It's like an
So-
hour past my bedtime, people, let's go.
We're voting on actions 1 through 10 as amended during the discussion tonight and as written in the minutes from the prior
Yeah.
discussion on housing. So all in favor, say aye.
I'll second.
So, oh, I'm sorry, thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
What is this now?
Voting on the first, no, sorry, John, we're voting on the first 10 actions, John. So it's everything but 11.
And Mike and Katie are 60 years old, they need to go to bed.
We're not voting,
It's a religious thing.
we're not voting on climate, though. This is just the
The
housing,
housing one,
just the housing.
right, I aged 20 years and thanks to
So
that.
I think So it's unanimous, so 1 through 10 is unanimous.
I didn't really age that much, but
And the last one is
every year
710.
counts.
710.
So we can move the minutes.
So now, very quickly, we have 2 more items on the agenda. One is we need to accept the minutes. I want to first thank Patrick for writing them. So we have the minutes for July 26 and the minutes for August 11. I don't know if people had a chance to read them. Do you want to take more
Thank you.
time?
Oh, yes,
I didn't look at them,
No.
sorry.
We could do it at the next meeting if you want.
That would be good.
Sounds good.
Yeah, so we're good with that, so we'll give everybody another chance for that. And then the last thing is, we just need to talk about next meetings.
Judy?
I think she's gone. So we need to schedule another meeting. I think part of it depends upon when Judy's gonna be able to get back to us.
Can you send us a poll?
Yeah.
We can do a poll, why don't we do
Do
that?
you want it, so we have, our next, if we follow the meeting schedule, it's the 4th Tuesday in the month. We could go with that, or I could send
It'd be October
a meeting
25th.
schedule for,
Unless you need it sooner, that's fine.
it only depends on really when we get comments back from that.
Judy.
And we still need health.
Yes,
still need
you
help.
community health too?
Yeah. And also, I just wanna say that it might be good to look for another date than when the Tuesdays when the the select board meet. It may not be possible at this point, but that's why Glenn can't attend most of the meetings. So that, and then sometimes, Patrick
You
may
have
get
to
caught.
run
It may be hard to change that now, but, I mean, but I may, we'll just see if that's even a remote possibility. Are people good with the hybrid meeting in person?
fine.
Makes things easier. So I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. And so we'll put out, Patrick will put out some emails, we'll figure out when the meetings will be, and we may go into the next year. Right now, the notional goal was maybe having the plan completed and being able to go to the planning board by the end of the year, but I don't foresee if that is gonna work out. I think that to be determined. So with that, I'll entertain, unless anybody has any other questions, entertain a motion to adjourn. Mike?
I'll second.
Second. So Mike made the motion. Yeah. All in favor?
Aye. Yeah, yeah.
I want to thank you all.